All right. What's up, folks at home? Welcome to Tuesday night episode with the 10 Horse Money and JB over here. Just getting settled down. It is good to be back with you guys.
It was good to be on a lake.
Yeah, we both got to get on the lake for a little while this weekend. Sunday, right?
Yeah. It seems, I forget we're not on Monday nights, right? Like this is now Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And I can't say yesterday because then my boss would think I took off and I didn't have any vacation plans. But
it seemed like a long time ago, though, for me.
Yeah,
it's
for
only
sure.
2 days ago.
And we both fished until well after dark.
Yeah. Right. I still couldn't cast anymore. Yeah, you had I guess we both had similar days. It wasn't like
it wasn't lights out by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't even really want to get into like that because there's got too many folks on here that know where we fish at. So I don't even want to get into how I caught them. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Yours is a little more specific.
Especially on that lake. Like if I've mentioned the one thing that it's super obvious. So, which is not a big deal, but I don't want to give up the juice just quite yet.
What's up, Perry? Your stuff is Perry won the Cumberland Pro Lures jig pack last week. Sweet. And I mailed his stuff out yesterday. So he should be getting it probably tomorrow or the next day.
Depends on how good that mailman is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You never know nowadays. It wasn't tracking, so there's no way I can find it if it gets lost. I just put it out there in the ethers. Because it's weird. It's like if it fits through they got this little slit in this cardboard thing. If it fits through that, it's like a little over $2 to ship if I don't get tracking. But if it's a little too flat and it touches, it's like $5.95 to ship the same thing. I mean, it's literally like how you place the jigs in the thing. If I put 5 jigs in there, then it's too flat.
You gotta like layer them.
Yeah, you gotta lay it out just perfect. It's crazy.
Is that like in a USPS envelope?
No, it's just a bubble wrap, like a bubble wrap thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's a white plastic bubble, whatever you call it.
So I guess they don't do the if it fits, it ships anymore?
I don't think so. I mean,
I remember there was we had ordered a bunch of egg sinkers for duck hunting weights. And I ordered like 50 or 100 of them, and they were all 2-ounce weights. And the guy had crammed them all into, it was back in like, if it fits, it ships $5 box or whatever. He crammed as many as he could get in there. It was full.
You're the reason why it got stopped. Why it got shut down.
Well, you think about that. That's lead weight. Like,
yeah,
100 of them at 2 ounces a piece. That's 200 ounces. I'm not going to do the math.
Oh, I know. I remember
like
picking some
one
of those.
Like, what in the
we play jokes with each other. You know, we'd say, "Hey, I think this goes to your route," and just hand it to them, like knuckles on the floor. People that reload, live rounds and stuff. They were
ordering like their shot.
Yeah, their shot. Yeah, you get that.
Or their.
I think lead of some sort was the culprit.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, just think about your terminal tackle box with all your weights in it. Like that's probably the heaviest box in your boat.
Yeah, especially tungsten.
No doubt.
If you ship, if it fits, it ships tungsten. You wouldn't be able to even move it. It'd be twice as much.
Who could afford? I mean, you would have to insure that for
probably be $1,000.
A ton of money. Yeah. I mean, I remember I had a tungsten deal at one point in time. Nice little hookup that we got cheap tungsten on, and you get this little bitty box and it'd still, even with a deal, it was like $200-$300 worth of tungsten.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Hammy, we're gonna talk a little spoon fishing, I do believe, because the plan tonight, folks,
I heard he's eating his chili right now.
Yeah, he's just getting off the water. I think he got on a pretty good bite, and I was kind of wondering if he was gonna bless us with his presence tonight.
Yeah,
that bite gets pretty. We're just lucky it's dark at 8. It's getting dark a lot earlier.
Well, it sounds like Hammy's out still on the lake.
Oh yeah, yes, I guess he is. From the Hawgz Cedar. I wish I got cell phone service. I switched to T-Mobile, and if I'm ever on the water and anybody's trying to get a hold of me, it's SOS only on my.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep. SOS or SOL.
Does that sink our ship or save our ship?
I don't know, but I got no service at all. It's crazy. With Cricket, I had service, but that's the way it is.
Well, that's not a bad thing, though, is it?
What's up, JP? No,
as
long as there's nothing going on,
Remember the days when we used to go to Montauk and there was no cell phone service on the river?
Yeah.
And you had to drive miles outside of where you stayed at just to get like a bar, and you'd stop on the road in the right spot, make your phone calls for the day or the week, and then
you're gone.
Bounce out.
Yeah.
And then it was radio silence but that was
it's weird having kids though.
I know.
Like, once you have kids, you're always wanting to be, even though you're 3 hours away, what are you going to do? Most likely.
Right.
Right. We got family here. So something happens, we'll be good.
But it was still nice to get the
Tom's in the house. Yeah, T-Mobile. It's actually, Phil, where we're at right now, like where I live, T-Mobile is better than AT&T because of the towers. But as soon as I get over in Southern Illinois, it's horrible.
Well, in Southern Illinois, it's like Verizon country. But T-Mobile, Cricket, probably two of your cheaper options as well for the necessity that we call a phone.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So Sunday, we kind of touched on Sunday. He's got a little pattern that he can't really talk about because it's super, super specific and it's area specific. But there's starting to become a little bit of a frog bite, maybe, and a punch and bite. That's kind of what next time I go out, which I'm going to be going out tomorrow for a little while. I'm going to try to get. It's still a little bit early, but it's starting to. I saw a little bit of shad flickering in the grass, and there's some mats that are starting to get topped out a little bit.
They're starting to see
the little tops sticking out, little tassels.
Yep, that's usually like a good indicator. I don't know what is that a bloom or something?
That's what I think it is.
When you hit them, sometimes with your rolling a frog across there, you hit it with your bait going in. It kind of like gives a little like cloud of dust, and I would assume that it's pollen when it hits.
It might be.
But yeah, this is my favorite time of the year.
Yeah,
me
too.
It's getting 3 months is my favorite time of year to fish.
Yeah,
because it doesn't matter if it's 95 degrees or it's 50 degrees. I can pretty well catch them every single time doing a similar thing. And I think it kind of reverts back to. You want to bring Ron in? He stepped in. Is he ready? Nope. He says no.
Okay.
Take
your time, man. Take your time.
But I think it relates a lot to the spawn too, where it's the photo period, it's the length of the day that really sets that fall transition up for us. It's not necessarily the water temperature. It's not necessarily the air temperature. It's that length of day. They know that the days are going to or the light is getting shorter, and they have to start moving and start feeding more. Whether you're on a big reservoir, that's probably the backs of creeks, that's backs of pockets, super oriented to bait. On a lake like we fish that's got a lot of grass, a lot of that bait moves into the grass. So I'm looking forward to that. But I saw a couple mats yesterday that started popping, and you're on one side of the cove and the mat on the other side of the cove, you see like 3 of them blow up. And then when you get over that side, they're blowing up on the other side. It never fails for me.
Once that water gets down and the water temps get down in like the mid 70s, it seems like that coincides with the photo period a little bit, and the shad starting to move.
And we're off right now too, because we just came off of that like
super heat wave.
And I mean, I saw 88 yesterday. 88. That's hot.
I saw 92 I got to go last week over to Egypt, and the water temps was 92, 93.
That was in the middle of the heat wave though, right?
That was, it was in the middle of the heat wave, but that was like 10 o'clock in the morning.
Holy cow.
It was ridiculous. There was no wind that day. What's up, Scott? Good to see you on here. Corey Weaver, what's up, brother? Let's bring Ron in. You ready, Ron? Let's see if we can bring him in. What's going on, man?
What's going on, guys?
Not a lot.
Welcome to the gun show.
I
didn't know it was the gun show.
I can roll my sleeves up.
Dude, isn't this summer attire for everybody when you're fishing?
Well,
no.
No?
No. It's for me, it's long sleeves.
Okay.
I feel weird with that. Well, a lot of it. So I went over to the lake the other day and I had a t-shirt on because it was kind of cloudy when I got there. But then when I'm doing the GoPro thing, I got like a wire running down. And if I do it with a t-shirt, it's running down against my bare skin. That feels weird.
And then that cord gets wrapped up in like your chest hairs and it starts pulling and it's not fun.
It's pulling around your nipples and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I wouldn't want to go there.
You started it.
You just talked me out of doing a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
No, I'll be honest with you, Ron. Like skincare after what my wife went through this past year is definitely top of mind for me now.
Is she doing?
Yeah,
she doing better.
Good.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Good.
So
no, you're right. I'm just I don't know. It's just I get hot. Even the summer shirts, I just get hot, and I'm a pretty good boy. I don't drink too much anymore, even though I got a glass of bourbon sitting next to me. I do a lot of things right. I wear my life jacket when I'm fishing, but I guess one of my things is I just shorts and a cut-off T-shirt and some flip-flops. I haven't worn a pair of shoes since May.
So I will say that like I'm flip-flops everywhere I go, so I'm not perfect, but I guess
I wear flip-flops quite a bit, but my feet,
I sunscreen my feet.
There's a fine line though, especially on a day when there's some wind and you got flip-flops on. Like before I leave the house, I put a layer of sunscreen on my feet, but I have to re-layer probably if I'm on the water which I don't get on the water that early, but let's say I'm on the water at 8, which is actually pretty early. Like 3 or 4 hours later, full sunshine, I definitely need to be putting some more sunscreen on. And the longer I go without that, the more susceptible I am. And usually what keeps me going without doing that is a wind. You got some wind blowing on you, you don't feel that heat like you do if it's just calm.
Yep.
And I got peeling skin right now on the top of my feet from a couple of weeks ago.
I haven't had that, knock on wood, in 3 or 4 years, but I remember, and it was actually with you, and this happened years ago. I was just a kid. We were fishing Duck Creek and it poured down rain that morning. That was a horny toad bite. I don't know if you remember that. One spring. Poured down rain that morning. Everything's just soaking wet. Had tennis shoes on. Got done with the rain. The sun popped out. And I just took off my shoes and socks and let them dry on the back deck. Didn't think twice about it. And I got home and it was like blistered an inch across both of the tops of my feet. Couldn't put shoes on for like 2 weeks. It was awful. Awful. You could see like all the water underneath it. Like it was just, so from then on, I was like, you should probably take care of your feet a little bit better because that's just like the top of your head. It's just going to burn. So,
yeah, I guess I'm lucky. I got, my great grandmother was Filipino.
Okay.
And my grandfather was Portuguese on my dad's side. So I'm fortunate. Other than I put some on my face every day. Other than that, once I get a little brown, I don't have to wear anything. It just doesn't bother me. I don't know if my feet are tan or dirty. Probably both.
Well, if you haven't washed them or put shoes on, you don't know. So, I mean, just a little lake water when you get out.
Right. Yeah, when you load the boat, you step in the water, you're clean. Good to go for the next day.
That's right. That's right. 1 shower a week. You don't want to use a lot of water.
What's up, Carrie? I tell you what's hard to do though is I always take a pair of tennis shoes and socks with me because when I reach that point where I feel like my feet are really getting fried, I put socks and shoes on out there.
Okay.
It's so hard. A, you got sunscreen on the top of your feet, and then B, they're nice and cool and comfortable. It's so hard to put a sock around them and then a shoe.
I'll bet.
But a lot of times I just put a sock on. And I just go without my shoes on.
See, I'm the crazy guy. I
kind of halfway in between.
I'll wear flip-flops until like it's borderline your toes are going to fall off.
Yeah.
And I bet Ron's the same way.
I'm the same way. Yeah. My buddy Jason up north, he wears them all winter in Minnesota.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, he'll wear them unless he's, ice fishing or something, but he'll wear them all winter when he's driving around.
Huh. I'm not that tough.
But the good thing is,
like,
boys,
I'll kick something that time when your feet are that cold and you kick something, man, that hurts.
The good thing is talking about sun and everything is we're not going to have as much of it as in the day coming. Days are getting a little shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Ron.
Yeah.
Can you close out and then come back in? You're getting that audio scratchy stuff on your end. Okay. So Brandon says the only thing I can get bit on the last month or so has been a buzzbait around pads. I'm ready for the fall bite. Yeah, man. Me too. We're here in Cape Girardeau area. I'm not sure where you're at, but it's been pretty nice the last, what was it? Saturday evening, kind of about mid Saturday.
Saturday,
kind of
also Saturday we got that rain.
Right, in the morning.
Yep. And it piddly rained all day long. And then once that rain left out, it was there was a little front that moved in, and it was really nice Sunday morning when I got up. And pretty well all day on Sunday was nice. So
yeah.
Is that better?
That's
a
ton better.
Well, so you had you fished a derby Sunday. What was your day like as far as the weather in the morning? Was it raining over there, or had it passed through, or what?
It poured.
Oh, really?
Poured on us on the way to the tournament, and poured maybe the first 2 hours. Poured. We got like 3 inches over here at the lake.
Holy cow!
Well,
We didn't get anything like that.
He showed me the back of his boat when I got there, and you still had quite a bit of water runoff from the morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was weird because we weren't supposed to get that much rain, but we did. So whatever. There was no lightning, so it was actually kind of pleasant to fish in. And the fish bit a little bit during the rain, of course, and that's no surprise. So yeah, we had a derby down there and had a pretty good day. We took third in Angler's Choice and cut a check, and I think we had second big bass too. So, it was a good day. It was good seeing JB there, and I looked and I was like, "Is that JB?" And poor guy was trying to put in when we were all coming in. It was kind of a madhouse, and nobody parked where they should.
That is for certain.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I think
all of the words that I said on Sunday cannot be repeated on here.
No, I know. It was, and I said those same things in the morning. It was almost worse in the morning. I don't know. It was a bunch of experienced guys. I don't know what was going on.
I think everybody wants to park where they feel comfortable parking at, but we've all fished enough big tournaments, and I tell you what, the worst was like fishing BFLs. Like, you got a guy that just parks randomly in the middle of the parking lot instead of lining your trucks up, and it doesn't matter if
everybody up.
Yeah, just park right next to the last guy that pulled out.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That spot, when that row fills up, go on to the next one. Don't
and get as close as you can without dinging doors, and turn your dang headlights off when you're back in your boat. It's like everybody forgot that. It was just like it was just one of those days for whatever reason. But it was a good time. Everybody had a good time, and fish bit a little bit, and it was actually a pretty good cursor to fall because we were in with the weather. We looked at each other and says, "Well, let's go shallow," and we did, and they bit. They weren't up there in gangbusters, but there was enough up there with that rain that we were able to catch our fish.
I've had two things. You guys are talking about parking and that kind of thing. I remember one time I think these both happened this year. There was a guy had pulled in right in front of the bathrooms. Those are like single space. That's not for a trailer and a vehicle.
Right.
He parked right there with his boat trailer sticking out way out off the back of it to where you couldn't swing around and line up with the boat ramp. That was a true story. I saw that. And then there was one guy, this is like a couple months ago, probably 3 months ago, where he pulled, basically it was like he put his boat in, pulled straight forward, and instead of pulling all the way nosing into the fence post or whatever that are there,
the parking spot, he was probably, the nose of his truck was probably 15 feet towards the boat ramp, and he parked right there.
Oh my goodness.
It was crazy. I don't know what the guy was thinking. I don't know. It was so odd. And I ended up knowing the guy.
Was it an older gentleman or?
No, it was he should have known better.
Right.
I finally put my boat in. Actually, I was waiting to somebody else is putting their boat in, and I see this guy pull up in a boat, and he gets out, and it's the guy that had parked like that, and he ended up recognizing me, and I talked to him and stuff, and I was just like, I wish I wouldn't have known that guy.
Right.
You know, he's a nice guy. And it was strange that he parked like that because it made no sense. You had to go completely. You couldn't really line up. You just had to kind of go in at an angle to get your boat in. I don't know. I don't know the thought process of that, but you do see kind of random stuff
part
like
of
that.
it. I think part of it is, a lot of people jumped into the outdoor world during COVID that probably didn't used to spend a lot of time outdoors, and now they do. There's a lot of folks that good people, but they just don't know better, and they haven't had anyone teach them the etiquette of it, and it is what it is. And I try to be patient. I don't lose my temper the way I used to.
Well, it's inexperience. It's nothing else. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're good people. Just they don't know any better. So
yeah, and they'll learn when they put the boat in and someone else has their truck all goofy, and they're like, "Oh, I get it." Yeah,
right.
Yeah, maybe the person it was Wednesday morning, they pull up and there's nobody else in the parking lot, and they're like, well, nobody's fishing today. I can just park right here, and then it'll be really close when I want to put my boat back on the trailer, and I just walk up the hill and boom, we're right there.
So we talk about all the folks that don't know any better. What about the folks that do know better that still?
Well, that's a whole other story. That's another story. There's plenty of them that do know better. And
I wonder if the parking lines, if somebody has that parking lot ever had, lines spray painted on it? Did it?
Like right after Jesus was born, I think.
It used to be gravel, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the road going.
They could do. There's enough room there. They could redo that parking lot and make that much more user friendly.
Well, even if you went north another 5 feet, took those posts out, and then same way on the other end, go all the way to the wood line. You wouldn't be infringing on
what
anything.
Is that? That's Shawnee National Forest, so they'd have to have some kind of permit to cut some trees down, probably. Yeah. But there's room north, I think, where you could expand that parking lot a little bit.
I don't think you would have to do that. If you just pulled up a little bit, that would create that second row where you could actually get trucks in and not have them cattywampus the whole time.
Yeah.
So,
or people could just go fish another lake.
Yeah, we talked about that too, didn't we, Ron?
Yes.
we have a heck of an idea.
Yeah, Andy's got an idea here too. Video on boat ramp and parking etiquette.
That's actually a good idea.
I might jump on that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, you can get Ron and I, and we can be the jackasses there, and we
don't be JB. Don't park like this.
don't be RD and J.
Yeah.
Don't park like this.
And Ron can slash your tires. This is what happens when you park like this, and people get back and they slash your tires.
Sure, a picture of me and Gabe rolling in the parking lot.
Phil said he'll stand outside and he'll stand at the boat ramp and
there you
charge
go.
$5 to park your truck for it. That's valet parking.
And another $5 to back it in, right?
There you go. It'd be like California, $10
Let's
to launch your boat,
fishing.
$10 to pull it back out. Let's do it, man. So I got a question about Sunday. Was the bite, did you experience like kind of an all-day bite, or was it just heavy in the morning and then when the rain cleared out it changed, or what kind of bite was going on over there?
It was a grind, honestly, in general. It's not like they were jumping in the boat. We only caught 3 overs all day. And for those not familiar with our lake here, it's a 14 to 18 inch slot. So they allow you to keep 2 over 18 and then 3 under 14. We caught 3 overs all day. We happened to have 2 decent ones, but it wasn't easy. And we caught all 3 of our overs in the rain. We didn't catch any more overs after it quit raining. And then the unders were kind of nip and tuck. We got them, but again, it wasn't easy. And we went back out deep for the unders, and we were able to catch them finally. But it was a bit of a grind. I mean, the week prior it was 90 whatever degrees every day. And then we had 1 day of respite and then that rain. So I think what had happened, I think a lot of those fish got nocturnal during that heat. I really do. Because the bite was on. As soon as there was daylight, it was on. And I think that was one because of the rain, but I also think that's too the pattern that they'd been in for the last week or so because of the heat. Plus, and we also have a full moon coming on too. So all that kind of played into that very early morning bite. And then it slowed down. There were some good fishermen in that tournament that did not have a limit. So it wasn't easy. But what was cool, though, was how we caught them. I mean, it's no secret we caught them on a frog. And here it is, August, but it's late August. And here we are on the doorstep of September. And I heard you talking before I jumped out. And those weeds are starting to look right. A lot of that gunk is out of them, which happened later this year than what it normally did. But I call when that milfoil and coontail with tassels, like cornfield. That's what it looks like to me. Starting to see some of that, even though the lake's still pretty high. The weeds just look like they should have fish in them, and they do. But they're not piled in there yet.
Yeah.
And you can certain match, you hear bluegills or whatever, popping, and you can get a bite in there, but there's fish deep, there's fish mid-range, and there's fish in the weeds. And so I haven't been able to find any big concentrations of fish out there really all summer, to be honest with you. It's been kind of had to cover water that type of year.
What do you mentioned night fishing and fish being nocturnal, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, it's weird how sometime in the summer you start noticing that the bite gets a lot tougher, like during the day, say
during the day,
10 to 5 or something, or 9 to 5 or something.
Yes.
And
100%.
that, to me, that tells me that the fish are feeding a lot at night. If somebody's going to go night fishing, what do you think the best time period for night fishing is? Because I've noticed a lot of times, like if I'll fish till dark. Like right now, let's say it's fairly dark it's pretty dark at like 8:15ish. Okay.
It's getting dark earlier.
Yeah. I'd consider 8:15 your night fishing, but a lot of times, let's say you get on the water at 5, and 5 to dark is going to be your best time frame, or like the last 3 hours of the day. But then if you continue to fish when it gets dark, a lot of times for me, it's like you don't get a bite for several hours, I think. That's just been my experience. What do you think the best time to go night? Like if you were just going to go on a night fishing trip, when's the best time to go night fishing?
I'm not bragging on myself, but I have a ton of experience night fishing. One of my favorite things to do. I haven't done it much the last couple of years. But as long as you've got clear water, there's a bite at night all year long, including the winter. That the week we had last week when it's hot like that, that's a great time. 3 days prior to the full moon, 3 days prior to the new moon are key. And I can tell you, I would not go to the ramp till 10 o'clock at night in the summertime. What happens when that sun goes down at 8:30, 9 o'clock, a bass's eyes are no different than yours and mine. Their rods and cones take roughly an hour to adjust. And so oftentimes right after it gets dark, not always, but right after it gets dark, oftentimes is a lull. And then 9:30, 10 o'clock, things pick up. And then it's game on. And then there'll be lulls all through the night. 1 in the morning, for whatever reason, seems to be a really consistent time for them to bite. And you can catch them on the same lures you throw during the day. Like, for instance, I love a 7-inch power worm in the summer in a brush pile. Well, you can throw in the pitchiest dark of nights, you can throw a rubber worm in a brush pile or wherever, and they'll eat it. They don't have as much trouble seeing or feeling as we do. You can fish exactly the same way. Big build crankbaits are awesome at night, partly because it gives you a lot of feedback. You always hear about a black spinnerbait at night. And a black spinnerbait in the springtime at night should almost be illegal. I kept that secret to myself. Not really a secret, but no one really did it around here. I would start in March. I've got journals. Mid-March is usually when I could start catching them in high 40-degree water.
Oh, really?
Yeah. High 40-degree water, it would start. And those are typically your biggest fish that you catch then. Those big fish are just like deer. When you're hunting a big fish specifically, pretend you're deer hunting. They don't do what all the other little rascals do. And you catch them. There was Bob Bush, the local guys will know who that is, one of the local legends. Used to run a hunt club, great tournament fishing, but he would run a goose club back when goose hunting was all the rage in Southern Illinois. And he had clients for his goose club come down in the middle of the winter, December, January, whatever, but they would night fish Devil's Kitchen Lake. The Devil's Kitchen Lake is known for its 10-pound fish. It's probably the only place in Southern Illinois that legitimately has 10-pound fish. And they would fish at night in January for trying to catch. They were looking for one bite. And they did catch a couple. Bob Bush doesn't make up any stories. And I believe it. 48 degrees is the coldest water I've caught them in at night myself. I haven't been man enough to fish in the middle of the winter at night, but it's
hard enough to fish in the middle of the winter.
It's a real thing. Huh?
It's hard enough to fish in the middle of winter during the day, much less go out after dark.
Yeah, but it's a real thing. But you have to have clear water for it to be viable. And if you've noticed, Cedar for a while got a little grainy, the lake we're talking about. And in the last couple of weeks, it's cleared up. And then that clear water was in conjunction with that heat wave. So between clear water and that heat wave, and then the thermocline was dead set on at 15 foot. I mean, it was like a concrete floor. When you find a brush pile in 15 feet during that heat wave at night, you're probably going to catch a couple good ones.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed over at Egypt, there's a thermocline like 25 to 26 when I was over there the other day. Quite a bit deeper.
Yeah, and I don't understand it. I don't know if it's the boat traffic or the power plant but it stratifies totally different than our other lakes.
How much is color?
Which is a good thing.
How much does color play into the equation?
Like the stain of the water?
No, bait color.
Oh, bait color. Okay.
You want to throw black a lot for contrast. Like if you're throwing a worm, throw a black worm. And then on crankbaits, one of the things I used to always throw fire tiger at night, and the wobble of that crankbait with the black and the chartreuse together, I think helped those fish find that bait. But you don't have to, when I throw a spinnerbait at night, I throw a black spinnerbait with a number 5 Hildebrandt blade. You can just write that down in the Great Book of Knowledge. It's all you need. And I'm telling you 100% truth on that.
Okay.
And caught thousands of 5-pound fish on a number 5 Hildebrandt blade spinnerbait at night.
You putting a chunk on there, like any kind of
depends.
chunk? Or
when the two of us would fish, we'd purposely have one guy put a number 11 pork chunk on, and then the other guy would not. And it just depends where those fish were wanting to feed. they're wanting to really feed up, that usually that pork chunk would outproduce the one without the pork chunks. It would ride higher in the water column for a little bit better silhouette. But if you needed that bait to get a little deeper, then the no trailer deal would seem to work better. And you could usually figure it out in about 30 minutes or so. The best fishing trip I ever had in my life, with the exception of a few days on Mille Lacs, was on Little Grassy Lake here in Southern Illinois. And me and my buddy went out, Braden Gibbs, in case he watches this sometime. We were throwing, we called it Blackie. That's what we called our black spinnerbait. And we caught 71 pounds of overs in 4 hours. They were so aggressive. Dude, this is no lie. They were so aggressive. I was reeling that spinnerbait in, and I lifted it out of the water, get ready to make another cast, and a 4-pounder hit the side of the boat, and I threw back out there, and it bit. That's the only reason I know it was 4 pounds. It hit the side of the john boat. It was charging that spinnerbait.
So it missed it. It missed it and ran into the boat.
Ran right into the boat.
Coming in hot, boy. Fish is coming in hot. Give me some of that.
I threw out 10 feet from the boat, and I caught them. That's how aggressive they get. Yeah, that's honest to God truth. So,
well, it's funny that you said 1 o'clock.
But
the last time that I was night fishing, which has been years and years ago, like we had a little club derby, and it was like 2:30 or 3 was our cutoff. And I remember I was like, I want to go. I was dog tired because we always did it in the middle of summer. You didn't sleep you didn't, take a nap in the afternoon. You just went fishing. So, 2:30, 3 o'clock comes around, you're done. Like you're toast after. Because we always started like 7 too, like one of the hottest parts of the day in July, like that 2 hours before it gets dark, it's just muggy out. Well, 1 o'clock, the bite just fired up. I was like, this is weird. Like hadn't caught a fish from dark until then, and then all of a sudden it was like back to back to back to back, just killing them. So
yeah,
there was something to that then, because I don't night fish much. I fish until dark, but that's about it.
It's it used to be more popular. I think we've just gotten old. But it used to be I can remember fishing night tournaments, and there'd be like 40 boats. In what normally these ramps are limited to 20 boat tournament. We'd get 20 out of Pomona and 20 out of Carbondale and fish from, usually it was 8 in the evening till 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
And is what it usually was. And
those are long nights.
We'd fit my old bass club, the Bass Busters.
That goes quick.
They'd have 12-hour tournaments. A lot of time it was on Crab Orchard. You'd start at
8 to 8.
I think it was 8 to 8 or 7 to 7, and I would usually go 7 to 2, and then I'd lay down on a dew-covered, mosquito-infested boat seat for like 4 hours and try to sleep, which I never did. And as soon as the sun kind of started peaking at about 5 in the morning, maybe 4:45, I'd jump up and fish until we had to put the boat back on the trailer. But yeah, man, I do that at least once a year. I did that for years and years and years. And
yeah,
it's fun, man, but you're trash the next day. You're done.
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting there at night too. Like,
it's
definitely loud.
Yeah. Your senses are more in tune.
Yep.
It is totally different.
Well, it's for me, it's like I relate it to like fishing in the fog. Like I know Cedar just as well as, all 3 of us know it like the back of our hand. Every nook, every cranny. But
that tree line though is deceiving when you're running.
You turn the lights out.
Yeah.
You put fog on the lake. That lake is a whole new ball game.
You see what it is your depth.
Those trees. Yeah, that tree line. That tree line was really important. It's not that big a deal anymore with GPS. But before GPS, the uniqueness of the tops of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you would line up your spots oftentimes, and I still, some of those trees are still there. So it's kind of, I get a chuckle going down the lake. Sometimes I'll look up and I'll see a particular tree. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how I lined up that stump over there or whatever. But it's all you can see at night long. You look up and city lights from Carbondale actually shine across the trees if you're on the north end. And the lights from Anna actually you can see the tree line at the south end of the lake. A little bit, enough that you can get a reference point for where you're at.
Those that don't know what we're talking about, but there's what, one or two houses on the lake?
I think there's 2 houses, and they're way up in the woods.
Yeah,
too.
there's
no artificial light out there.
There's not a lot of light pollution there.
I know several people that have got lost on that lake trying to find the boat ramp in Pomona because it
gets dark.
It looks kind of similar. There's a lot of coves that look.
Well, if you're coming, say you're coming from Carbondale in, and you're coming down the lake, and you got left or right, it's either going to the East Arm or to go towards Pomona boat ramp. I've watched guys, and I've been in with guys that we running down, and they veer left as they go down. It's like, where are you going? We're going to the ramp. Like, that's not the way to the ramp, guys. Turn around. Let's go this way.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost out there.
Well, it was a fun tangent. I was expecting to talk about night fishing, but
the black light. I used to have a black light and a clear blue fluorescent line. The strand, the blue strand.
Mine was the Excel.
Looks like Pro.
Well, now they've got fluorocarbon now that will show up in the black light.
Really?
Huh.
That
says something about night fishing. It's stayed popular enough to where they come out with fluorocarbon that shines at night. Somebody said, did they see me at a BFL? Nope, that wasn't me. I got a BFL coming up in September. I fished 2 out of the 4 in the LBL division, and I'm in 75th place in the points with 2. So I'm gonna jump in the super tournament just to try to qualify, just to see if I can make it. I'm gonna see if I can finish in the top 45 and fish the regional.
Where's it out?
It's a long shot. It's out of Paris.
Oh,
it's a long shot. And I was gonna go fish I may fish the Lake of the Ozarks, just jackpot that one, the super tournament, because it's on my long weekend. And then I've got what else do I got? Maybe that Warrior William tournament. I'm kind of on the fence about that. If my buddy Mike is supposed to be fishing with Greg, if Greg isn't able to fish because Greg's had a shoulder surgery or something, I might jump in the boat with him. And then the Anglers in Action team championship is like in November down at Lake of the Ozarks. So that's kind of my tournament schedule for the next.
Did you guys finish that Anglers in Action? That was 3 tournaments.
It's 3 tournaments. Yeah, we qualified for the championship. Okay. I don't know where we finished at. Top 30 or 20. I think we finished like 25th or 26th. I think they take 20%, 30%, but we finished high enough to qualify for the championship. We kept getting better as the season went on. So that's a fun one. If you guys are in the Lake of the Ozarks area, they have Grand Lake, Lake of the Ozarks, Table Rock. That Anglers in Action it's a really well-run team tournament. Fish Grand? No, we just fished the Lake of the Ozarks division. But they have divisions on each one. And I think I have the open division too, where you can pick 3 different tournaments or whatever, or pick them all. But it's fun. It's a good time. It's well run. Big Al, who is the commentator for the National Professional Fishing League, he's the Anglers in Action MC. He does a good job, and it's fun. I'm looking forward to that. I haven't fished a tournament in a long time, Ron. It might have been the tournament, at least on Cedar. It was the tournament that you and I fished in like February when we fished that jerkbait tournament a long time ago. I think it was.
Are you kidding me?
No, that's the last derby I fished on. Yeah, that's the last derby I fished on Cedar, and then I fished a few at Lake of the Ozarks. But it's been probably 3 or 4 months since I fished a derby. It's weird, man. It's really, really weird. But I'm starting to get some more time now. Like I'm going to be able to go tomorrow, so it feels good to kind of get back in the swing of things. I didn't miss it because.
Are you coming over here?
I think so. I'm thinking about it. You going to be out there tomorrow, or?
No, I'm taking. So, buddy of mine, new buddy of mine, his name Trevor Barham. He bought a new boat, and he's got Lowrance and Active Target 2, and he's got the new HDS Pros. I mean, all the newest stuff of Lowrance. And he's a Guardian guy on his John boat. And he says, hey, would you jump in the boat with me and help me set up my Lowrance? I was sure. So anyway, he put his boat in and he picked me up down at the dock and off we went. And we've been fishing these schools now for a few weeks. I was like, I got a school. Let's go. We'll go sit on them. And, see, you'll see what it's supposed to look like, whatever. And he, like I say, he's got the new stuff. I've got the old stuff. It's only 1 year old, but it's the old stuff now.
Yeah.
And turn that thing on, and I'm like, damn you! You just cost me $1,500 because it's better. The Active Target 2 is better, and it's legit. And I've got mine. I've had to really play with mine to get it where I want it. I finally got the settings and whatever, but this is much better. I think Garmin is still better than Lowrance, but this is pretty close. And so I'm like, well, crap. So I got home that day and I picked up the phone and I called Harrison's and I said, Dave, order me Active Target 2. He said, gotcha. I'll take the boat in tomorrow to have that installed. And now I'm going to have to buy an HDS Pro to really get my money's worth out of it. But
how much better is that Pro?
It's better. And I'll tell you, I'm a Lowrance guy, so take what I say about Lowrance with a grain of salt, everybody. And everybody's got good electronics anymore: Garmin, Humminbird, Lowrance. But I'm a Lowrance guy, and I really do think the mapping and waypoint management on Lowrance is better than everybody.
I would agree.
But the Lowrance side scan only goes to 800 megahertz or hertz or whatever it is, whereas Humminbird is 1,000 or 1,100 or whatever it is, and that's why Humminbird has been known for better side scan than Lowrance. Well, now Lowrance, really what the HDS Pro is it accommodates the higher end Active Target, but the meat and potatoes is now it has 1,000 hertz or megahertz or whatever it is on side scan and down scan. On the HDS Lives, there is no adjustment on your hertz, megahertz, whatever it is on down scan. There is on side scan, 455 to 800, but on down scan there isn't. Now the new Lowrance, it's adjustable on both down scan and side scan, and it's legit. We pulled up on the School of Fish, and I swear to God, I could see him smiling. It was so clear. I mean, it was
all right. Like, this started to sound like a Lowrance commercial here now. Come on.
Yeah, well, it is, and I knew in 5 seconds I was like, well, I gotta get the checkbook out because I cannot not have this because I love to use my electronics.
Because I know that they have a new transducer, right? Their new,
yes, that's part of it.
The new transducer is pretty phenomenal. I wonder if does that translate over to the HDS's Lives that you and I have, or all three of us have?
That I don't know. There is a module you can buy that will upgrade your live units to whatever the level of HDS Pro is. It's another $1,500, and that's fine, and that'll work. The problem is that's another drain on your battery.
Right.
That's another, and we're all so maxed out on what we're pulling from our battery. I'm just going to be like, well, I'm not going to replace all my HDS Lives, but I'm going to replace 1 or 2 of them with the Pros. And
sounds like somebody's going to have some cheap HDS Lives coming up for sale.
Yeah, probably will. So anyway, it's the world we live in. It's as soon as you buy something, you're outdated in a year.
Waypoints included or not?
Depends on who buys it.
My buddy Woody up in Mille Lacs, he doesn't have forward sonar yet. And I told him I'm getting ready to sell my AT1, which I think I might have sold. And he goes, I'll tell you what, I'll just trade you all my Mille Lacs waypoints. And I was like, no. He's got good waypoints. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, the first time I was out in a boat that had the Garmin LiveScope Plus
34.
the 34, the LVS 34. It was it was a lot better than the LVS 32. It really was.
Was it?
Granted,
Don't tell me.
the guy that I was with, he had that C clear wiring harness. He had 16, he was running like 16.4 volts through his lithium batteries. He had done everything that you could possibly have done to get that picture. He had a 12-inch, the top of the line.
He had like the 8416 or
whatever it is. It was a really the top of the line graph where ours is a 1022. It's basically just the entry level graph, and we still got LVS 32. But the picture was, it made me think too. I mean, it made me think. I'm like, well, I know by watching this that I'm missing a lot of stuff. The distance was the target separation, like the fish in the brush pile. We were crappie fishing most of it, but you could cast 100 foot and see a crappie jig pretty good on his. Where I'm good to about 60 maybe with my LVS 32.
Yeah, me too. 80 if I'm lucky.
It was a big difference. I mean, it wasn't enough to where, I mean, I wish I would have held off for like 3 months. And here's a funny story. So the reason I bought my LVS 32 is because they discounted them, and you got like a $300 gift card was part of the discount.
You never spent that gift card, did you?
No. So I paid full price for it in a roundabout way. I sat on that gift card, which is exactly why they do this for people like me that are passive and forget about the gift card that they're going to use one day and they forget about it. Well, it had like a 6-month lifespan or a 9-month lifespan on that gift card. Yeah. So my daughter's trying to buy a laptop. She's been shopping for this laptop for like 6 months. And I finally told her, I'm like, you've been working. She's been cleaning the office, and she's got a job up here at TJ. She's been working 2 days a week. And I was real proud of her. And she's wanting this $1,200 laptop. I mean, it's a supercomputer. It's super fast. It's pimped out to the max. And I told her, you've been working really hard. You pay a certain amount, and me and your mom will cover the rest. And I said, I've got this gift card that it's just sitting there. It's $300. We'll throw it in on the computer. So we sat down, we pulled it up on Amazon. We're in the final, it's in the cart, and I'm typing in all the information and stuff. And I look at this gift card and I punch it in, and it said it's not valid. And I'm like, what? And sure enough, I look at it, and it had expired like 4 months before that. I was so pissed off. I'm like, I've been waiting on this for something special.
I caught mine.
I was doing the right thing. I was giving it to my daughter for this something that she's been working hard to get. And boom, I
caught mine within like days of it expiring.
Oh my God, so that's why they do it.
I spent mine on stuff that I didn't need, like just so I could get rid of it. Right. I just wasted $300 on a gift card. It wasn't something that I.
Yeah. So I wish I would have waited because it was literally 2 months after we bought the live scope, they came out with the 34. Mm-hmm. We bought 32 and boom.
Which we knew that was going to happen.
Right. But we weren't sure if it was going to be one of those deals where they talked about it and then it kept lingering and lingering and lingering.
And I tell you what, I just did
I'm glad I got it regardless.
I just did that with the HDS Lives, the 12. And I do not regret that purchase at all. Like getting those Lives,
a good unit
for the price that we got them at.
Yeah,
for what I need them to do, they're perfect. Now, I don't know. Do you have to have that module to hook up the new transducer?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
Because when we got ours, they had just launched the Pro, and that transducer wasn't available. Because I was debating ordering mine without a transducer and waiting for that transducer, but it was months out, and I wasn't willing to wait months. So mine barely got in the driveway before mine were installed. So
yeah, I don't know. It would make sense that you do need that module to get the benefit of that transducer. But I don't know enough about it.
Yeah. Hammy was asking about the Cumberland Pro Lures, Cumberland Pro, the Apex Underspin. I think I talked to Isaac like 6 or 8 months ago, and he was going to discontinue that. There may be some available on Omnia Fishing. I know they were carrying they were like the last place I saw that had the Apex Underspin by Cumberland Pro. I guess JB's going to check on it, but other than that, I don't know. He sent me some of them. I've got a little private stash of them, but it's been my favorite underspin for the last 3 or 4 years. And when I lose the ones I've got, I'm going to be hurting. I mean, I know there's Some guys have said the 6th Sense makes a pretty good one. There's several other ones out there, but you get used to one bait and you know how it runs.
Yeah, a good one. I'm surprised about the Cumberland deal on that. But if anyone's looking for a good underspin, if the Cumberland's not available, Scotch Pro tackle on there and gunner underspin, and the key is getting the blade away from the bottom of the head. That's the key.
Yep, that's super key.
And Scotchboro has it's got a nice little, I don't know, hatch wire off the bottom of the head, gets that blade away, so that your plastic doesn't get in the way. And they've got a good variety of painted blades as well, and with all different sizes. And I've had really good luck with that. The Scotch.
Are they on there?
So, Hammy, you better get on there. They have one.
Is it on Omnia?
They have one in the chartreuse and white in 1/2 ounce. They have 5 of the plum crazy with silver.
So bluegill color.
Yep. In the 1/2 ounce, they have 5. 3 of the pearl in 1/2 ounce, and 5 of the blue gizzard with gold.
Yeah, so they're just about out of it.
Only in 1/2 ounce.
Okay, which I throw a quarter a lot.
And that is on Omnia. So
okay.
I throw a 3/8 on when I throw my underspin, but I build on my own. So
yeah,
I got tired of.
I'll throw all those weights. I'll throw as heavy as 3/4. When you see those fish down there in that 25, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll use all of them. But
what's up, Hank?
But yeah,
good to see Hank on here.
I would throw a quarter of each.
Hank says Hank's got his stuff dialed in. He said he could see a 5-inch single in 3 feet of water, 60 feet away from the boat. I guess you got perspective mode. That's something I wish I would have got that. You got that mount too, but you don't ever use it.
I got it mounted on there right now. I haven't. Which I didn't even think about that. But this fall I need to really start utilizing that. I got it set up on there. I've turned it on a few times, and it's been usually the days that I remember it, it's blowing 40 in perspective mode. Makes you almost sick looking at it if you've ever looked at it. So
speaking of fall, what are you guys going to have tied on your deck here in about 2 weeks?
Yeah, let's get into that. I think Tom was like, quit chatting about other stuff. I'm here for the top 5 fall baits. I'm going like I said earlier, I punched a little bit the other day when I was out there. So for me, that's the next thing I'm looking forward to is punching. I enjoy punching. It's kind of meditative, you know, it's repetitive. It's either happening or it's not, but you can cover a lot of water, and it's pretty straightforward. You're looking for good mats that are clean, that have the tassels. They've got a little bit of bait flipping around in them. And it's really as simple as I keep it pretty simple. I'm throwing like a 7'10", 7'11" rod, and 50-pound braid is what I throw. Usually, what's that?
4-strand braid for cutting through the grass.
Just plain Power Pro. Actually, I'm getting ready to put some new braid on tonight. I got some of that slick. Have you experienced that slick? You don't like it, huh? Really?
Not for punching.
Not for punching. Okay.
No.
Man, I've heard people say yes.
It's not for punching.
Okay. Well, then never mind. I'm not going to put it on there. I've heard people say yes.
It digs into your spool when you set the hook on a fish.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm just going to put some fresh Power Pro on there.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. I think it's 8-strand, but it's like a 1 ounce weight. If the grass is thick, really thick, 1.25 ounces around here, that's basically all I've ever used is 1.25 ounces. 2 bobber stops and a 3-aught flipping hook. I kind of went down from a 4-aught to a 3-aught the last couple years, and some kind of a beaver style bait or a tube or a rage crawl, and you just cover water, man. Just cover good looking areas, and it's fun, man. It's fun. I got that bite the other day. I caught just an upper slot fish, but it takes a little bit to get used to that bite, because a lot of times in my experience, and I've heard it both ways, and I've had it happen both ways, but typically most of the days when I'm getting a good punching bite, it's kind of a mush bite. You know, you flip it in there and you kind of pull up, and it kind of feels weird. You know, you may miss a couple. You may pull it back in. You're like, man, I think that might have been a bite. I should have probably set the hook on that. Kind of spongy, but you're in grass too, so you're getting that grass sponginess too. So it takes a little bit to get the feel of it. Every once in a while, you'll feel a little thump, or every once in a while, your line will really move sideways. But most of the time, you got to just kind of start getting in tune with that bait. And, you know, I typically miss a few. But the other day, that fish, I pulled it up and it pulled it back down. So I knew it was a bite. And that's a good way to kind of start the punching season. But that's something that's going to be, you know, one of my 5 baits that's on the deck. So over to you, Ron. What do you got on the deck coming up?
Well, I'll throw one in there. One thing, I'd like to get in the boat with one of you two punching. That's something I need to get better at. I enjoy it the little bit I do it. And for those listening, about when we're talking about different braids, when you're fishing in grass with braid, you want a braided line that's coarse, that's got edges to it, and that cuts the grass when you set the hook and the fish moves. Whereas like that slick or a high strand braid doesn't do a good job of cutting that grass. On the flip side, if you're fishing wood, you don't want a coarse braid on wood, because it'll saw into the wood, and you know, then you're SOL. So anyway, but I am not a flipping expert, a punching expert by any means, but I do enjoy it. I think this time of year, obviously the next component to that grass fishing this time of year is a frog. And I just accidentally
you guys went right into it, didn't you?
Right, we went right to the meat and potatoes, man.
Yeah, I mean,
big rod, heavy line.
I mean, why screw around, right?
What's left? I mean,
what did you think we were going to say? Drop shot?
Oh, there's a lot left. There's a lot left. But I tell you what, I learned a lot Sunday in our tournament on the frog. We caught him on a frog, or my partner caught him on a frog. And it was raining. And so a lot of times when it's raining or you got a lot of wind, if you're throwing top water of any kind, you got to do something to help the fish find the bait sometimes. And we were throwing the same frog. His was a popping version. Mine was just a regular frog. And he smoked me. I mean, smoked me. I had like one blow up, and he had like
behind you too, right? Is he out of the back of the boat?
Yeah, behind me. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was like, okay, I'm learning. You know, I was more than happy to grab the net, believe me. But so I learned a lot there. And so, you know, and he had a really distinct cadence too to the way he was working that popping frog. And I think I was too much in a hurry. And he was just in the back of the boat, relaxed, and let me fight the front of the boat and the weeds and all that stuff. And he put it on him. I mean, he put it on him. And it's very similar to jerkbait fishing in the sense that cadence, little details, all that stuff really comes into how much do you weight a frog? You know, do you get it if the mat's real thick? You put a little weight in there to get it pushed down on the mat, so on and so forth. You just can't pick up a frog and throw it and think they're going to bite it. There is definitely, and every day is different, but it can get very detailed with that frog. And man, that was really a good experience to have in August to help get ready for September.
Were they crushing it, like blowing up on it, or were they just kind of sipping it?
On his, yeah. I fished a frog off and on during the day, and they were like nipping at mine, but they were eating it. It was like, oh crap, I hope we didn't kill that fish. I mean, they're eating. You know how they get it back in the crushers? That deal?
Yeah.
you know, you got those 2 big hooks, and I mean, they're eating it, you know, and I'm sitting, you know, I got my hood up because of the rain, you know, my rain gear, and I could still hear the fish blow up off to my side when they were eating it. I mean, he didn't have to yell for me to get the net, you know, and I had the net, and I didn't screw it up, so we cashed a check. So it was pretty cool.
White or black?
He was throwing that dumb brown thing.
Yeah,
I don't know what you call that color.
Dumb brown,
doo-doo brown.
Yeah, I swear that is a worthless frog color, but it always kicks my ass. So I ordered some. Yeah.
That's a color. I think Strike King calls it copper. That's a color that not many people talk about. And
we can just stop.
Yeah.
Yep. I found that one out about 6, 7, 8 years ago.
It's been longer than that, bud.
Yeah.
Because that spot hasn't been the same since you wrecked it that day.
It's a fun one.
You were close to the dirty 30 in your boat that day.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. Yeah, that's a little sneaky color. Anyway, well, that's cool, man. There's nothing better than getting that frog bite. And you're right, though. The cadence is that if you've got the time, like if you know there's a really good frog bite, some of the best days I've ever had on a frog have been fishing it super, super slow, like twitching it and just letting it sit for 5, 6, 7 seconds and it's like, it reminds me of, like you said, fishing a jerk bait when it's really cold in the winter. It's the extreme opposite. The water's really hot, but if you got the patience and you're in the right little stretch, you may go through that stretch fishing that frog fast or even at a medium cadence and not get a sniff or nothing. But if you hit it a couple times, let it sit, count to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, hit it a couple times, all of a sudden, boom, the mat will just
the water falls out from underneath it.
So slower, better a lot of times.
It was a great reminder. And then the other thing too is that you're reminded of is not all weeds have fish.
True.
So that's the other thing in fall is when we start talking about this punching and frogging and all that. You got to find the limited areas that have kinds of, because if you catch one, there's probably several. You know, slow down.
And that changes every season or every year, right? Like where I caught them last year was really good stretch. It's not going to be the same good stretch this year
because the grass changes.
Right.
Yeah, the grass changes. The bait, you know, where it is changes. But if you find one, there's probably you probably, and you need to pay. The other thing too is once you find some fish in the grass. Now, obviously, you're probably going to be fishing grass that looks good, but pay attention to the bottom. What it's made up of? Is it a hard bottom? You know, is there a break line of different types of weeds nearby? You know, is there some sort of change in weed? Just like when you rock transition, weed transition can be really important. You know, once you find some fish, really try and pay attention to what's there. And then that's how you slowly can build a pattern. You know, if you're on a lake, a lot of times on our little lakes here, you can't because we just don't have enough area to be able to repeat things sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes you can. But pay attention, you know, that was in 4 feet of water with hard bottom. Or in 6 feet of water with a hydrilla milfoil coontail change or whatever it is.
And you can milk an area like that for hours too.
Oh yeah, you know, sometimes you can catch all you want.
Well, there's usually a school. There'll be a school in that grass.
Yeah,
I mean, a 100, 200 yard stretch you can spend 4 hours in.
Yeah, there'll be schools in there, and yeah, it's so pay attention to all that. It's just not go down the bank with your eyes closed.
And then a lot of times, just piggybacking off of what you said is the location is also key too. Like, was it on an actual point? Was it just a little bit inside the cove? Was it in the back? You know, a lot of times they're all the way in the back of the coves, and then you won't get bit. If you start out on the main lake point, you won't hardly get bit until you get to the juice spot all the way in the back. But then there's other times where they're right on the point. And as you start getting away from that point, you start getting less and less bites. And then there's sometimes where they are just in like the little main lake pockets. So you're, like you said, you're looking for the right ingredients which is bait and good looking grass. But then the bottom is another thing to pay attention to, and the location of the grass mat. So when you kind of put all that together, you're going to be putting yourself in the most productive areas, and you can run around and have confidence. And that's another thing with frog fishing. When the frog bite is good, that's what you're fishing. Put everything else down. And I've seen it happen. I've given up on it. I'll fish it for a little bit and not really get the feedback. Say you're fishing for an hour and not get the feedback. Well, it's happening. You're just going through the wrong stretches. You got to keep running. You got to keep moving. It's like brush pile fishing. If you go out on the lake in 8 hours, you plan on, and they're in the brush piles, you got to commit to fishing brush piles for 8 hours. Maybe fish 40 brush piles, as many as you can fish efficiently. Same thing with a frog bite. Fish as many good stretches of grass all over the lake as you can. And, you're probably going to find 3 or 4 out of those 30 stretches that's going to be holding fish. And you can have an amazing day. You may fish the first 10 of those stretches may just be horrible. And you're like, it's not on. But if it's the right time of the year and that's the hot pattern, just keep moving, because if you find it's like scanning, side scanning or whatever, you keep scanning. When you find the right stretch, it'll make that day worthwhile. So you got to put that sucker in your hand and cover water.
Yeah. And unfortunately those areas aren't, like you said, they're not everywhere on the lake. So finding those areas is what you said. You talk about, you go 8 hours, and if you could find one stretch in 8 hours and never pick up the trolling motor, and just follow the bank as far as you can go, and then turn around and come back home. I mean, and find one stretch in that area. It helps to know the lake, but frog fishing can be feast or famine. I mean, I know that lake fairly well, and I've had some rough days over there with frog in my hand. But when you hit them, my gosh, it can be lights out for
it's fun.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. And the lake that we're talking about, that might have been there all summer. I'm just stubborn. I like to go fish deep in the summer, but when you got good weeds, there's always fish in the weeds. I mean, not all the fish ever leave the weeds. There's always fish there, and I should probably throw up more than I do.
You can catch them on a frog all year, summer long.
But let's back up. What did we just talk about? We had an extended period of extreme heat. We had probably 7 or 8 days where it was 90 to 98, 99. And then we had this front pushing in. That right there made a big difference on those fish pulling up shallow. They may have been shallow, but they may not have been aggressive. You get a nice good rain and a front coming through, and those shallow fish come alive.
I was going to say that the best days that I've had in the fall are a rainy, nasty day.
Yeah.
Now, I know all rainy, nasty days are good, but they can be exceptional in the fall. You can have one of those. I'm still looking for it, but that dirty 30 day over there, it'll happen eventually.
Well, and you start getting the lake to yourself. Okay. So when it's 50, we're coming off of high 80 and 90 degree days, and we get some high 70 degree days, and then you get a day that's 50 and rainy. That's cold. I mean, it's cold coming down. You're not used to it. That's cold. So you're going to have a lot more people in the woods hunting, and you're going to have nobody on the lake because it's cold, 50, and it's raining. Most people don't like to fish in the rain anyway. You throw 50 degree temperatures on there, and then half the fishing crowd splits up and starts going into the woods. So you can have that lake almost all to yourself, and you can run that pattern all over the lake and just fish the juice all day long. So what's another? Go ahead.
Mine's a swim jig.
I was going to say JB's turn.
If I have to go somewhere, it's going to be a swim jig. You guys took the 2 hammers out of my hands, so I'm going to have to go swim jig. So that swim jig in the same areas, right? Like when those fish aren't biting the frog and you're not getting a punch bite, a lot of times they're not going 200 yards out to the deep offshore summer haunt. They're going to just pull out on the edge of that grass, and they're going to feed. Maybe it's a cloudier day where they're not sucked up underneath that grass mat. They're just out feeding on the edges. You're still in the same areas. Your boat's pretty well in the same position. You're just pulled out another 5 feet and making that 45 cast right on the grass edge. Even you can throw that swim jig up in the little holes. If you're in a kayak, you can definitely get behind that grass mat and get that untapped region back there.
Virgin water.
That could be some good fishing too. I'm just not. I don't have it in me to get a kayak out there.
So what about trailers? I know we fish some of the same trailers, but different. A lot of times you have a little bit meatier plastic on there.
Oh yeah. So I throw like a 3/8 would probably be the smallest swim jig that I will throw, but I'll put that Zako or Zaco from Yamamoto. The new one from Big Bite Bait, the Kamikaze shad. I really like that one because it's super subtle. But then I'll throw like a menace, a rage crawl, or the lobster, a little bigger crawl. And I usually turn everything sideways just to get
vertical.
Yep.
Go vertical with it.
Yep. But that's kind of my setup for a swim jig, and it's either it's going to be either a chartreuse and white or it's going to be a bluegill pattern. And that's pretty well all I'm going to throw.
So when you're casting that bait out, talk about like your retrieve a little bit. What are you typically doing?
What do they call that?
That straight reel?
Oh no, they call it the Alabama shake.
Yeah, the Alabama
shake. So
I
high stick it, and I mean I'm hitting every piece of grass that I possibly can. Running it and everything.
You do realize that should be called the Crab Orchard shake, not the Alabama shake.
Okay.
We were doing that in 19.
I struck a nerve there.
Crab Orchard.
Yeah, you talk about swim jigs. You can hear. That's the first place I ever heard of a swim jig back then. But it wasn't actually a swim jig. It was just a light jig that you swam through the pencil. I call them pencil reeds.
Right. Water willow.
Water willow. Okay.
I'll do it in the water. There's some places around here that I can get it in that water willow, and a lot of times I'm throwing it on 65-pound braid, and I'll skip it in that water willow, just bury it as far as you can in there, and do that same shake on the way out. And you'll get some bites way back in there, but you got to have a stick to get it out. You're not going to throw it on a medium action rod with 12.
No, yeah, you got to. Yeah.
If you're going to throw it in the water willow. Now, if you're throwing open water, you throw a lot of open water swim jig, you can get away with that. But burying it up in the grass, I don't think the braid really. They're not seeing that braid where I'm throwing it at.
Yeah, I'm throwing my swim jig setup is. It's morphed slightly over the last couple years. So I threw a Quantum Smoke 7-foot medium heavy for a long time with 15-pound fluorocarbon and just a 7-to-1 gear ratio reel. And a lot of times I throw in a 1/4 ounce swim jig because when I'm up there shallow, I'll throw I got 3 trailers basically. On a 1/4 ounce, I'm throwing a rage crawl just to kind of keep it up. You got the really big flappers, you got a flat surface, and I can really slow roll it. And I shake it a little bit, and then I kind of let it fall, and I shake it a little bit. If I'm wanting to get kind of mid-range, I'm throwing a menace, a rage tail menace. And then if I want a little bit deeper, a lot of times I throw a little Hawgz Custom Bait, like 3.5-inch swim bait, or I'll throw the skinny dip, the little dipper by Reaction Innovations. That's kind of my main trailers, but I've kind of moved up to the 7'2". I've been throwing that Virtus Jewel 7'2". It's a medium heavy swim jig rod, and it's a little bit longer, so I get a little bit longer cast, but it's still not that much longer to where I'm still accurate with it. But basically, the 7 to 7'2", maybe 7'3" is like the sweet spot for that swim jig. But 15-pound fluorocarbon.
Do you throw a chatterbait on that rod too?
I do, but I got another rod. It's also a Virtus rod, but it's the Acura series, which is a new rod that just came out. It's a 7'3" medium heavy. It's their buzzbait chatterbait rod, and that buzzbait bladed jig rod. And I've been throwing my bladed jigs on that, and it's even better. It's a little bit softer rod. And man, it does this. Like you can feel that chatterbait. It's really thumping. Okay. So I've kind of switched back and forth, but I've kind of settled on that because I like to have a swim jig on and I like to have a bladed jig on at the same time a lot of times.
In the fall, the bladed jig and the spinnerbait will play in the fall. You get a
spinnerbait too. But
Yeah,
I typically
come out
I'm
the
going
corners with
I'm going a
grass.
1/4 ounce to 3/8 ounce most of the time on my swim jigs, where you're
I'm
3/8 and
3/8 and a
heavier.
half, yep.
Yeah, but I'm typically going a little bit smaller trailers than what JB
I was
is.
gonna say the one other trailer that I'll throw on there, which again gets me to a 1/2 ounce. I'll throw that big hammer swim bait. That was a mistake purchase from Kentucky Lake. I got the 4-inch versions, and I was thinking they were going to be a little bit beefier, but that little 4-inch version of that hammer, it keeps it. That's probably one of my favorite setups. They got rid of my favorite trailer.
Was it the BK Shad?
Yeah, the BK Shad by
Paka or
Netbait.
Netbait, yeah, that's a good one.
So
Braden said he got one of the rods.
I'll give a nugget away.
Okay, we like nuggets.
And the only reason to give it away is because I don't think many people will do it anyway. But we're talking, obviously fall equals grass fishing a lot of times, right? And with the pressure on our lakes, if you can be a step off of what everyone's doing, whatever it is, obviously you give yourself a bit of an advantage. And something I've already done this year and it will put fish in the boat. Throw a larger, not a big bill, but a larger bill balsa. It has to be balsa crankbait in the grass, and throw it where you would throw a chatterbait. And what I'll do is you're making short casts like you would roll cast a spinnerbait, and you throw a Bagley's DB2 is a great bait. You want a little bit of a bill because the bill will actually bust through that crisp fall grass like a rattle trap will, and throw that, roll cast that right into the grass mat, not where it's matted over, but where it starts getting blotchy on the edges, and throw that in there and up in a hole in the grass, reel it down, let it float back up. Reel it down. If you come a piece of grass, you can snap your rod. It'll pop that fresh, clean coontail or milfoil that you want. And you want a bigger bill so that when it dies, it goes down like, where's my hand? Goes down like this, so that the bill will bust through the weeds. Usually at that bait when it's floating up. Almost every other bait that people throw this time of year, when do they bite it? When it falls. So you'll be the only guy on a mile stretch in the world that is throwing a bait that floats up that they're biting. So that in and of itself is completely unique. And you'd be surprised how thick a cover you can fish that bait in, and not near enough people throw a crankbait in grass.
I agree.
And I promise you, give it 30 minutes. And if you're on a good stretch, you're going to catch fish. And you can get your boat real close to your targets. You got to make really accurate casts and reel it down, let it float up. Reel it down, let it float up. And you will be amazed what that bait will do. And it is a killer on a blowdown. When you get a blowdown in a grass mat, you can work that crankbait down on that and then let it float up. Reel it down, let it float up. And you'll thank me, I promise you, that it will catch fish. And it has for a long time. It's a technique that, a lot of the older generation did a long time ago. And it was really a staple. This isn't anything new. It's not like I made it up or anything, but that was something that was done a lot back in the day. And then people, the first real crankbaits that were available to us were the Big O and then Bagley's balsa. And so the balsa, the quality of how fast it floats, you can use that characteristic of the bait to really fish some. You would be shocked at how thick a grass you can fish, especially if it's crisp. It has to be crisp. You can pop it through there. And you'll see most of the bites. Actually, you'll see them come up and roll on it.
Have you filmed the hybrid?
I was just gonna say I saw Mike in here a while ago, Mike Russell with Strike King and Bag 5. That was what I was just gonna ask was, have you thrown that hybrid hunter in there?
The hybrid hunter? No, I have not. I have not done it, but I've got a few of them, but I haven't thrown them, so I don't really know anything about them.
It
Any
definitely.
crankbait though that you want it to float fast, and it has to have
that's what I was gonna say.
bill.
That one does float high quickly.
Okay, but when you reel it, you want it to go nose down really fast, and that bill going nose down real fast is what allows you to snap it through the weeds. If the bait's horizontal with hooks, you're going to get hung up. You want a bill that goes nose down. That's why you use a bigger bill, not a square bill. A bigger billed crankbait, like a DB2 is what I throw.
So is that a shallow diving crankbait with just a big bill, or is it actually something that gets down there in like that 8 to 10 foot zone if you just throw it out open water?
It'll run. If you were fishing it traditionally, it would probably. That's a good question. I would say it probably runs 7 to 8 feet, probably something like that. The DB2 does. Rapala DT8 would be a similar crankbait, but I like the more of a round crankbait. They seem to float a little faster. They just are more buoyant. And that's a little something that not everyone's going to be doing this fall that might help somebody put a fish in the boat.
Here's a good question.
Even if you don't have draft, throw it on a blowdown. Work it in a blowdown.
Good question from Oregon Small Jaw. He says, how do you decide between a spinnerbait or chatterbait on the days that you're fishing?
Me?
Yeah.
I tell you, I'll throw a spinnerbait first, and if I can catch him on a spinnerbait, the hell with the chatterbait.
Good answer, man. I like that answer.
Because I don't lose fish on a spinnerbait. I lose fish on a chatterbait. So if you can catch the same number of fish on a spinnerbait, throw a spinnerbait. You will not lose as many fish. You
think it's that blade? You think they come in so hard on it that they get the bladed jig, the blade? It's like a weed guard. Is that? Why do you think you're missing more fish on a?
I don't know. I have tried every rod combination. That's why I asked you about if you threw that bladed jig on. I'm still looking for the right bladed jig rod. I just don't. I think that bait's still moving sometimes in their mouth, and it pops that hook loose. I've had more than one conversation with the fish about that damn chatterbait, and then other days you never lose anything on it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the year, I lose a hell of a lot more fish on a chatterbait than I do a spinnerbait. I
think you need a really soft rod. That jerkbait or that swim jig rod, that 7.72, that Vertus swim jig rod is so sensitive. Yeah, I've said it on here before when you've heard me say it in my videos. It's so sensitive that you will pull that bait away from the fish until you learn how to like deaden your senses, which is super hard to do. And it's a little bit faster tip, where that Acura is slower. It's all got to do with kind of graphite that it's made out of. So to me, the Acura is slightly less sensitive than the Red Diamond, but it has a lot softer action, and which is perfect because you need something that's not, in my opinion, you need something that's not quite as sensitive, but a little bit slower action to let that fish, suck that bait in, because it's so hard to not. It's like a buzz bait, like trying to not set the hook on a buzz bait. It's almost impossible, So you need a softer rod to help you allow that fish to grab that bait in, and that's something that I found with them. But yeah, sometimes you just miss fish on a chatterbait for whatever reason.
I was watching one of Greg Hackney's. I like Greg Hackney. He's
Did you watch him on
he's also
the Bilge with Zaldane?
I did, yes.
Yeah, he was just on there. I watched it.
It was a good one.
Yeah, he's a good one.
Yeah. This was another video, but he says if you're losing fish on a chatterbait, put on instead of go to 20 mono. That's what he does, and that solves the problem for him. But no matter, losing fish on a chatterbait is a known issue that you got to get around. So,
I'd like to go back to that. spinnerbait question. So for me personally, the day like you were fishing Sunday when you got some rain, that I tend to gravitate towards a spinnerbait. If it's a rainy overcast day, I really like a spinnerbait. Now you can catch them on a chatterbait that day too. For me, there's something about I just have a lot more confidence with a spinnerbait on those kind of days. On a chatterbait, I think you can get by with a chatterbait on a wind, just a little bit of wind, and even if it's sunny. I think it's harder to catch fish on a sunny day with a spinnerbait than it is with a chatterbait, just my opinion. And then I would say if you want to throw a swim jig into the mix, a swim jig is kind of reserved for even calmer conditions. I think you can get by sometimes with a swim jig bite on a day when you couldn't catch them on a chatterbait or a spinnerbait. So then kind of the more nasty days, I think I lean towards a spinnerbait, but you could certainly catch them on a chatterbait on those days. But then when it's not quite as nasty, it seems like the bladed jig will still get you some bites where your spinnerbait bite won't be off. And there's something about popping that spinnerbait in those blades around that grass and letting it fall. Sometimes that will trigger them when the chatterbait won't work for whatever reason. So you kind of got to play.
The thing about that, I'm sorry. The thing about that chatterbait is it's the what it does well is it clears the grass. And a lot of times the key to that chatterbait is purposely getting it hung up in the grass and popping it free. And that's when you get your bite on the chatterbait. A lot of times you've got to get in the grass and pop it free. And it's that reaction bite you get when it pops out of the grass. Spinnerbait, as much as I would rather throw a spinnerbait, when they get in that scenario, you cannot get a spinnerbait in the grass the way you can get a chatterbait. It'll just follow up, and it won't pop free the way a chatterbait will. Mm-hmm. And in that situation, then I will throw the chatterbait. I'm making it sound like I don't like to throw a chatterbait. I do like to throw a chatterbait, but it's just frustrating on some days because not everything gets in the boat.
I know he will because I've seen his garage. He's got a few jackhammers in it.
I've witnessed some pretty good fish catches out of the back of his boat with a chatterbait.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's not like he's not going to throw it, folks. That's for sure. Doug had a question. What about the Pose 300 round? Did you throw that in lieu of the Bagley's?
I have one question. Do you have any?
I bet he does.
I got some.
Gabe says he's got some. Uh-oh. We lost Ron.
Brother, click out. Click back in.
Yeah.
I've got two or three of the Pose back in the
Doug
box.
says several.
He's got several.
I have a feeling they're hanging in his garage too. I've been in his garage as well. So.
His garage is sweet, man. He's got some little contraptions. He's got this like trap door with some kind of hook that comes down out of the ceiling. He's like the Inspector Gadget or something.
Yeah, I'll say it's like the ultimate. And his garage is like every time I've been in there, everything has a home, everything has a place, and it is slick.
Ron, you're froze up if you can hear us.
I'm gonna remove him.
Click out and click back in, and we'll bring you back in.
Come back out.
We just getting started. We're gonna go into there. He's coming back in. We're gonna go into the next couple things. So for me, we've got a punching frog and swim jig, right?
And chatterbait, spinnerbait, and
we kind of snuck those in there.
Which I think that like you said though, that all depends on the day, right? Like you have the nasty, cloudy, rainy day. That's going to be that spinnerbait day. Mm-hmm. The cloudy day is probably going to be that chatterbait day, and that day that it's a little bit sunny with minimal chop, you're probably going to go to that swim jig at that point.
And as I'm thinking about this a little more, there's also scenarios like in the post spawn. A lot of times, there's certain times of the year where it's not just dependent on the kind of the day; it's actually the time of the year where certain baits work better than others. We got you back.
He had to go fire up his whiskey again. And know what he's doing.
It seems like to me. Around that post spawn, when there's bluegill involved, That's when I get a really good swim jig bite.
Absolutely.
That's when I get a really good swim jig bite. And the chatterbait bite's gone, and the spinnerbait bite's
Well,
gone.
they've seen that chatterbait. They've seen that spinnerbait.
They see those a lot more.
All from
February, mid-February, all the way through, May. And when about May is when that bluegill spawn really gets good. It's just like,
it's all timing. Everything is just
how many plum worms have they seen over the last 3 months, Ron?
Right.
I haven't been to the lake, so it hasn't been mine, but I know that there was probably a few thrown.
Yeah.
Yeah, they see a lot of them.
There's been a few of everything thrown.
Absolutely. Doug says he has several of those Pose 300s. So
yeah. Pose. See, that's a cedar-sided crankbait. That used to be my favorite crankbait on the Ohio River, Golconda. We used to fish the wing dams with that Pose. What was nice about that Pose, being cedar, was heavier than, say, a balsa crankbait. You could throw that thing a freaking mile. And plus, I like the fact that Rick Clunn used to throw them too. So,
who's that? I've never heard of that guy.
Yeah, I know, some guy.
4 classes.
But yeah, that's a great crankbait, man. I don't think they float as. I could be wrong, but I don't remember them floating as fast as a round balsa bait. But if they do, it would work. Yeah.
Yeah, Oregon Smalljaw says he has really good luck slow rolling a gold double willow spinnerbait in deep grass on sunny days. A little chop on the water. Yeah, there's certain days where it just works. You got to try it. I typically, I have one. A lot of times I have 2 of those 3 baits tied on at all times. I'm experimenting with them because you just never know.
That swim jig's been, for me, it hasn't left the deck since I've got forward-facing sonar, because that's something that I can make a super quick cast out in the middle and
put a bait.
It falls to my spot in a hurry.
Yeah.
So
okay. So let's pivot to another bait. We've talked about 3 baits. Let's go to 4, and I'm going to talk about something that works on forward-facing sonar or just works covering water, and that's a underspin. Hammy was talking about it earlier. That right there has been one of my best fall baits. Is just a 1/4 to 3/8 ounce underspin with a 3 to 3.5, maybe 4 inch paddle tail. Oh yeah, we'll get to that. That's probably next.
It's coming up.
We'll get to that. We ain't gonna get out here without that coming up. But that underspin, a lot of times the fish are spread out in the fall. If you want to go down the bank and just cover water, that's a bait that works in any lake. It doesn't matter what kind of lake. If you've got grass, you've got standing timber, your really deep rocky lakes, like Hank was on here, Bass Geek. He's fishing a lot of those deep rocky lakes. You're talking about bull shows, table rock and stuff. Just covering water with an underspin. It's you've got a lot of small shad too. That's something I've noticed over at Egypt when I was over there. The size of shad that a lot of those fish are busting, they're like 1 inch to 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inch shad.
Mm-hmm.
You can fish a little small underspin with a 3 inch swim bait, and a lot of times, you're kind of mimicking those smaller shad by doing that. Just covering water. And I get a lot, and every once in a while you'll luck in, you'll find a school. And if you find a school in the fall that's congregated in a certain area, it gets stupid. We got a certain area that we fish, and they get there in the fall, and that's the days that I look forward to, because they're fish that have been kind of spread out, and they move to certain pinch points in the fall to feed up. And if you can find those, you can wreck them on an underspin. So I know you throw an underspin a lot too. I mean,
fair amount, yeah.
Fair amount.
I mean, that's where I learned to throw it. Like It was Kentucky Lake in the Super Tournament in September. Like the guy that I was with.
So talk about how the guy you were with was fishing them. He wasn't just throwing it out and reeling it in.
Oh,
That's kind of a little secret.
So that was like
here's some juice, folks. Try this next time.
Don't tell me you were snapping it off the bottom.
Oh, I can't. Okay, fine. I won't even say it then. But we were in standing timber, and it wasn't just like snapping it. It was like freaking
ripping
snapping it.
Yeah.
Like 10, 12 feet off the bottom.
And in 15 foot of water or less.
Yeah. It was
fairly shallow water.
Fairly shallow water. And that morning he had a limit in the boat in like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so he had a school located. Obviously, it wasn't like it was, just randomly pulled up on a bank and it's happening everywhere. But he had a school located and making that same cast. And I was back there like, what the heck's going on? He had given me an underspin, and I'm like, but I was not ripping it off of it. I was just kind of, but I also had one or two of those, and he had a sack full of them because he was fishing that standing timber. Every time he got hung up, he'd just pop it off and retie and go again.
Well, so. and here's another thing to pay attention to. There are days when they don't want a paddle tail; they want a fluke.
Yeah,
they want a straight tail bait with no action. So just because you're not getting any bites on that paddle tail, do yourself a favor, switch to something like a fluke, because sometimes it can be night and day for whatever reason.
Well, and I think it was 2 years ago, I had switched to, you kind of talked me into going to a paddle tail, a Kitech or
a little dipper.
Just a smaller swim bait. And at that same moment, you're going the opposite and you're going to fluke. You're like, man, I'm killing them on the underspin. I'm like, I haven't caught a fish in a month on the underspin. What are you doing? He's like, oh, I went to the fluke. I'm like, crap.
Yeah. There's some good information out there. Johnny Schultz. What's the name of his channel?
Fish the Moment.
Fish the Moment. Johnny Schultz just did a video on a straight-tailed swim bait, basically, and just almost like a pintail, not even a fluke,
like a jerky J.
And he was basically mimicking a pattern that Jacob Wheeler has been doing with that. And but the really at the end of the day, the key to it is that straight, do nothing tail of a plastic. And why the fish think that's different, I don't know, but that's a thing right now. And I actually I don't even know the brand of the stuff I bought. But I bought some stuff because I really didn't have anything in my tackle box that I've got flukes, but they've got the fork tail. These are just like a pin. For whatever reason, it makes a difference, apparently.
Yeah, that I use that Hog Farmer a lot for a chatterbait. It's a pintail, but it's fatter. It's a little bit less, it's more round.
You did a video a couple years ago about all the baits that you could rig on an underspin, didn't you?
Yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff with an underspin.
I mean, you caught them on a speed crawl on an underspin.
Yeah, I actually caught fish on a speed crawl on an underspin, which is crazy. But so
speed crawl will catch anything anywhere.
It doesn't matter how you rig it. If you can get a speed crawl on a hook, you will catch fish. I had somebody talking about he was killing them, throwing 50-pound braid, reeling it across grass. Weightless speed crawl, just buzzing it like a buzz toad.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, whatever.
If there's a day that I'm struggling,
speed crawl,
baby
brush hog sometimes.
3-aught, EWG, speed crawl. 1/4 ounce weight.
It may be a bluegill, but you will get a bite. There's no doubt about it.
Go to town.
Yeah, so you will get a bite.
All right.
Hold on a second. I got to address this from Hank because this is something that I want to share with Hank because we had Brent Anderson on here a couple years ago. I think it was Brent Anderson. Or who was that?
Yeah, about schools busting up on Kentucky Lake.
Yes. Okay. So you're right. You do pull those schools towards the boat. He was talking about fishing with Randy Haynes. And Randy Haynes had figured something out. And this is pre-forward-facing sonar. This is probably 15, 20 years ago.
This was just a couple weeks ago when he gave that
right.
up.
But the experience was 15, 20 years ago, back in the heyday when, they were really good on Kentucky Lake. But they would catch those fish, pull them towards the boat, and Randy Haynes would just back away like 50 feet, 50 yards and cast. Am I telling it wrong?
No, but he would be in the same depth.
The same depth. Depth is key.
If he was fishing in 15, he would back out and stay in 15.
So instead of having your boat in 20 foot of water, throwing up towards the top of the hump, let's say, and the top of the hump, say in 10, the fish are in 15, your boat's at 22, he would get on the side of the hump. And instead of throwing up on it, he would throw down the side of it keeping his boat in 15 feet and the fish are in 15 feet because for whatever reason, they wanted to be in 15 feet. So as he would catch those fish, he would pull them towards the boat. He would back away to another cast link. The fish would stay there, and he just continued to do that all the way down the river.
Yeah, but that's a river ledge that went on for miles, and you can stay in 15 feet for miles. Around here we can't.
You can't do that on a point.
You can't do it on a point. I mean, there's not many points.
Hank's got some ledges down there in his area, so maybe try that. I thought that was pretty cool. It's common. It's like a common sense thing that you overlook.
For me, underspin is the better of the options, because
the issue is though, no matter what you catch the fish on, they're going to follow it to the boat.
Yeah.
That's just what fish do. So irregardless of what lure you're throwing, when you catch a fish, they're going to follow everybody to the boat. And in Hawgz sonar, I mean, I had it happen to be, I bet I caught 10 fish today that fishing schools today, offshore schools. And you're throwing, you see the fish up where you catch. Next thing you know, there's 20 of them underneath the boat, right? Okay, I just drop straight down. They bite, and then you got to reposition a little bit, and because you do move the school, but now if you're just casting and reeling, yeah, you're going to move fish that way. You can, but if you're accomplishing what you're wanting to do, which is catching them. When you catch one, irregardless of what lure you're throwing, they're going to follow their buddy to the boat. So, it's just what they do. And Hawgz sonar, it's almost, when you're fishing offshore, it's almost really daily. But if they're deep enough, you can just drop right below the boat and they'll bite. When they do that, they're typically not afraid of the boat. It's not it's not a big deal.
My biggest issue that I've had though, underspin, I typically get that fish in, where if I were catching them on a 660, 5XT, a deeper diving crankbait in that same situation, if I lose that fish, which I'm more apt to lose a fish on treble hook than a single hook, that's when I feel, and I don't know if this is what Bass Geek's talking about, but that shut down schools when whatever lactic acid they put into the water, it's shut that school down, and then I can't get bit off of that school again. Yeah, I have to reset.
The thing that I noticed that will turn a school off is if you break off.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that. I had it happen today, actually. The first school I got on the day, I was just having a good time. I wasn't catching big fish, but I was probably 20 fish in and broke off. I was like, oh, crap, I should have retied. Well, guess what? I didn't catch any more fish out of that school. And I could still see them, but they kind of scattered. That fish that with the hook in its face, it runs off. Then they follow that fish wherever it goes with the hook in its face, and it just screws everything up. So I fired up the big motor and went and found another school. But Hawgz sonar, I don't want to get off on a Hawgz sonar tangent. That's not what tonight's about. But you can just watch them, and
they're bad on a jerk bait, like a school like you're talking about. They start following your jerk bait. They don't commit to it. You jerk it a couple more times. They come a little closer, and they come a little closer. Next thing you know, they just like 30 fish are right under the boat. Yeah, it's exactly. Nobody wants to be the brave guy,
Well, yeah, who's going to go first?
With the giant glides too.
Yeah, right.
The giant glides are
really
terrible about it because nobody wants to eat that bait. And then one swipes at it and then realizes that something's up, and then
and they go to the.
But bottom. It's like that with that bait, they forget about it though. So you throw that bait back out there, and it's like Groundhog Day. Every time you throw it back out there, they're like, "Ooh, what is that? What is that?" They swim back up to it.
Hey, since we started talking a little bit about offshore and underspin, and I don't know the answer to this. I'd be curious what people think or what you guys think. The old, we're all learning. We're relearning a lot of things because of forward sonar, because you can see. I mean, you can just see what's going on. The old adage was in the fall, the shad migrate to the back of the creek, and then they slowly work their way out. The more I go, the less I think that's true.
Yep.
It seems, the shad spawn, they go up in the grass or whatever shallow cover is, wherever they spawn, and the little baby shad live up in that area until they start to get a little bit bigger, which is early fall. And then they start to pull out. To me, it seems like they start to pull out of the grass or off of the docks or whatever, and then they congregate in loose groups basically everywhere. But you'll see that noticeably in the back of a creek where they're pulling out of the grass. And so I think in the old days we said, oh, they've migrated to the back of the creek. Well, no, I think they've just kind of come out of the grass. And now you can see them because they're all flickering on the top, and the little bass are eating them. And then as fall and winter progresses, then I think those fish kind of all pull out towards the main lake because simply they are a water temperature sensitive fish. They don't like, there's a limit to what shad can deal with as far as cold water. And so they tend to gravitate towards the main body of water where the warmest water is in the winter. I don't know. What's everyone's thoughts on that? I don't think I believe in this fall migration like I used to.
I think you see more because there's a concentration in the back of creeks. There's a lot less water than there is on the main lake. So when they do concentrate in the backs of creeks, you start seeing them more, right? When you start seeing that bait ball come up, I mean, but if, like you said, if they're coming out of if they're big enough to come out of the house, if you will, they're old enough to go out on their own and make their own decisions. Well, when they get out there, where do the bass go? They follow them out. Well, then they expose themselves because they've been blowing out of the top of the water. But when you're in a creek, you can see for 3 miles down the creek, you can see all the explosions. And it's a concentrated area. It's like a low water situation in that sense. But the whole migration thing, I don't think bass migrate as much as we think they do. I think they have a home range and they stick in that home range. It's just we catch more fish back there because there's a concentration of bait that has now moved away from structure, and now the bass are feeding on it. I don't think there's a bass that lives in, on the nose of the east arm at Cedar Lake that's going to travel all the way to the back for the fall migration to eat shad back there, because there's plenty of shad right there.
Here's what I think. I think there's a couple things. One, our lakes around here are smaller. We don't have a lot of really long creek arms to really see a migration. But two, what I have noticed, and this has got to do with forward-facing sonar, there is a migration that happens, and it is, you've got all these fish that are out suspended roaming around in the main lake. I mean, there are just tons of fish out there just doing fish things, whatever they're doing. They're not really relating to any kind of structure, any kind of cover. When that water cools down, the days get shorter, and the bait moves into the grass, a lot of those fish, I think, that are out there suspended roaming around make their way shallow into the grass. So it seems like there's a migration happening, but really those fish were probably in that area. They were just spread out, and they've kind of congregated and made a movement shallow. So all of a sudden, it's the same thing that happens in the spawn. You pre-spawn. You've got fish that have been out deeper. You could go down the bank and maybe get a bite every once in a while. But once a lot of those fish, like there's a big push of early pre-spawners or spawners, anybody can go down the bank with a chatterbait, a swim jig, or a spinnerbait and catch those fish. All of a sudden, 85% of the fish that are in the lake are in 5 foot or less of water. I think a similar thing happens in fall, where you get a lot more fish up shallower. They may be in smaller areas. You may have to cover more water, but I think a lot of those fish that were out in the middle of the lake migrate into the shallows and become more vulnerable. And we're starting to see them again. I think there's something to that, but like you said, I'm not so sure that a fish swims a half a mile, down a creek arm, because there's fish everywhere. Why would a fish leave the area that it's in if it has cover and it has groceries? There's no reason for that fish to leave. I mean,
they only do 3 things, right? You mentioned 2 of them, and there's one other one they do once a year.
Procreate. I mean, that's
it.
Right.
They make babies, they eat, and they hide. That's all they do.
That's it.
Right.
And every once in a while they get to take a ride in a John boat.
Yeah.
So they don't read Bassmaster.
Yeah. So this the fall migration thing, I struggle with that anymore, and I think you're like, if there's a creek that happens to have some fish available, I think those fish were somewhere in that creek all summer anyway.
I agree.
They might have been out a little deeper, or they might have been buried in the grass. And now they're coming out of the grass because the bait's moving, and they're catchable. But I don't think fish are swimming 5 miles to go up in a creek, because there's shad everywhere. That I'm seeing, and every part of the lake has some shad. And I guess that's a good thing that our lake has a good population of shad. But
yeah,
I got one.
What do you guys think at home in the comments?
I got one more theory for you, Ron, and this is from forward-facing sonar. I think they go and lay on the bottom.
Oh,
well, I know that
100%. There's a full population of fish that you do not see on forward-facing sonar.
Or side scan.
That live lamb on the bottom of the lake.
You barely see it.
I've noticed this.
I had a fun day today.
You had a fun day today?
They'll get in that mud, and you'll see the mud on their belly.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll fish an area, man, I think they're here, and you think you see something on the bottom, and you'll catch fish, and all of a sudden they all come up. And you'll see what was, you weren't sure you were seeing anything, to, oh crap, there's 20 of them, that come up off the bottom when you catch one. And I saw that today in an area where I knew there was fish, but I was scanning around and I couldn't really find them. And I saw on side scan, I saw some white dots, but they were just like muddled. They weren't really clear. So I was like, well, whatever. So I went around there and put forward sonar on it, and you could kind of see little bumps on the bottom on the forward sonar, but they weren't up off the bottom. I didn't know it. Anyway, I threw in there and I caught one, and they all up off the bottom, and then it was on. Then they were awake. So they definitely get in that mud. I don't know why, but they do.
Yeah. I've seen that. We've talked about this before, and I think everybody's had this experience where you side scan an area and it looks kind of void. You might see one thing that jumps out at you, but it's a high percentage area. And then you put the trolling motor down, things quiet down, and 10 or 15 minutes later, all of a sudden on the down scan, you start seeing fish. I think those fish were conditioned to, when they hear the outboard coming, they suck down really tight to the bottom. And there's places. Here's something to try. If you've got a high percentage area that fish live on, say it's a point or secondary point, fish live there, and you're used to running up within 100 yards or maybe 50 yards, shutting down, putting the trolling motor down, and fishing. And as the season gets on, those places get tougher and tougher. You may still see the fish, but they get harder to catch. If you actually, I've been experimenting with this. If you actually have the patience to run way past that, or start way before that, I'm talking 300, 400, 500 yards before that, shut the boat down, an area far enough away that it takes you probably 10 minutes to troll fishing casually to the juice spot, you'll see those fish a lot more than if you let down like 50 feet from them or 50 yards from them and put the trolling motor in the water. You're kind of like sneaking up on them. They think that they hear that there's something about that outboard that makes them suck to the bottom of the lake. It's just the way it is. I've seen it happen 100 times. But yeah, it's cool to to observe that stuff with forward facing sonar. Those fish are, like you said, they're hard to see sometimes. They're just sucked up so tight to the bottom, and until you catch one or stir it up, you don't really know they're there.
Yeah.
We got one more bait to talk about at least, right?
Yeah, it's your turn, Ron. Fall fishing.
Do I have to?
No, you don't. We can wait till winter to talk about it if you want.
No, it's a spoon. The grass thing is, we've talked about that. There's different population of fish that, not in all lakes, but in some lakes, there's a population of fish that is just offshore, and I think that's just where they live. And the further you get in the fall, the more they group up. And when they're offshore and grouped up, sometimes that spoon is awful hard to beat. And it's you can catch them on a spoon all through the year. I mean, look at Zaldane. He catches them all summer on the Tennessee River, on a spoon. Now it's better in the fall here just because the fish are in bigger groups, the offshore fish. But there's some pretty big schools now, and I've caught a few on the spoon. But they are, to be truthful though, they're not hitting the spoon as well as there are some other baits for me. So really can't answer that question as to why, but it does work. And
if you guys haven't,
when I'm saying spoon, huh?
I would say if you haven't experienced that bite, that's a phenomenal bite.
Oh, it's the perfect marriage of your electronics and your tackle. They go hand in hand. But when it's right, you can idle over them and you see it. It's not if you're going to catch them, it's how many. And it's just, when you see the right thing, when you see it, and when you see it, you know it. And if you're wondering if it's the right thing, it probably isn't. But when you find them, and it's just Katie by the door. And a lot of times we're talking about fish in mud. A lot of times some of those fish are, the tighter those fish are to the bottom sometimes on that spoon, the better that spoon bite is. And very often I've caught fish that have a muddy bottom spoon fishing. And I'm speaking of a flutter spoon is what I'm talking about. Jigging spoon will work too, but a flutter spoon is, casting, and it's a blast. It's just a blast.
That seems to really get, I mean, it happens early, but what's a water temp that you would say that spoon seems to dominate over a lot of other baits in the fall?
For where I fish, and I don't know if this is true in other places, because it may be different in different lakes as far as timing goes, but for me over here, it's probably 50-degree water temperature down to 45, somewhere in there, that upper 40s, that range, maybe to the low 50s that probably coincides timing wise with how these fish group up over here. I don't know if has really anything to do with the water temperature. Is it just because of the lakes I fish? That's just when these fish get in the right groups for that bait to be effective. And I imagine it's probably less water temperature and more just once those fish are in the right groups, then it's just a great triggering tool, that spoon. And idle, you find them, catch them, idle, catch them. And so it's one of my favorite ways to fish. It really is.
Would you rather catch fish on a spoon or a 7-inch power worm?
That's like asking if Jordan played the '85 Bears, who would win. I don't, that's not fair. That's why they're at different ends. That's why one's in the summer and one's in the winter. So I don't have to lose sleep over that.
What about a frog or a spoon?
Oh, a spoon. The hell.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
You catch more fish on a spoon, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're gonna get your fingers a lot sore on a spoon.
Yeah, number.
Yeah, that's a fun bite.
Not big fish, but you guys.
I don't know. Some of those days on a frog, I'll take over that.
Together.
Oh yeah, I've had a lot of fun on the boat with the spoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's better than
There's definitely there is an art to throwing that piece of metal.
There is,
and it really is. And it Gabe's got we did a not so much a catching video, but we did an instructional video. Was that last winter or the winter before?
I think it was last winter. It's you did a really good job of kind of just a tutorial on how
not
to
just me, both of us. But it's a really easy way. If there's always more than one way to skin a cat. Just the video that we did isn't the Bible and verse on spoon fishing, but it is a very easy way to spoon fish for someone who hasn't done a lot of that. Spoon fishing can be a little intimidating, but I like simple. We kind of figured out a simple way to do it, and I really take credit for it. I learned from watching the older guys here on our lake that spoon fish, and I was just trying to emulate them and learn how to do it. Really is what I was doing. So,
but the reason that you've become good at it is just like any other technique. When the time is right, we talked about frog fishing. We talked about punching. There's a time in the fall when the spoon bite starts happening, and you're going out and you're looking for that bite. You're not just junk fishing and you stumble upon that bite. I've been in the boat with you when you're that's what you're going to look for. You will spend. I remember a couple of times we spent hours and hours looking for that bite. Some days it doesn't develop and you don't find it. And then there's some days where it may take you a couple hours to find it, but you're willing to put in the time to go looking for that specific bite, because when you find that school of fish, it's ridiculous. I mean, you're talking 40, 50 fish in a short period of time, and it's just one right after another. So that the juice is worth, the squishing of the berry. I mean, it's like you got to put in the time to find that stuff.
What I remember was when we caught 10 or 15 a piece. He's like, all right, let's get up and let's move. And I'm like, no, they're biting. He's like, oh, they're biting everywhere. Let's go somewhere else. And you pull across one.
Yeah, I did that today. There's a rhythm to catching these schooling fish. And usually what happens, you find them, and they'll be the first barrage, and you'll catch 15, 20, whatever. Sometimes more. It depends how good the school is. But there's usually later you go down and they have a meeting, and they say, "Hey, don't bite that thing," and then there'll be a lull, and it happens. Most schools that you fish, and sometimes you can switch baits and refire them up and all this, but I kind of got to the point where you got to have a little bit of respect for your quarry, and so I'll catch a few. I'll tip my cap, and I mean I can see them on the forward sonar. I don't have to prove anything else, and I'll go try and find another.
Ron's over there more than we are. He's got the luxury.
I'm retired.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm retired.
You've got the luxury of living right there, and you can go catch them.
It's cool to have a little pet school.
Yeah,
a little pet school. You go when you want to just go jack a few. You go jack a few, and then if somebody comes over and they get in the boat with you, you're like, okay, I know a couple schools. We'll go rip some lips for a while. Yeah. It's nice to have that little school out there. But
when like you get to fish once a week, like you and I do, or twice a week, when you find that, it's like, you're going to pay. All the times that I didn't have you, you're going to pay.
Yep. Hey, JB, when we moved, we found more though.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not. But I was told going into that trip, are you okay with idling for hours? Absolutely. I scoffed at that. That was easy. I'm game for that one. And the first one we pulled up to, I'm looking at the dots on the screen. I'm like, holy cow, they're here. He's like, yeah, it could be better. I don't know how this could get any better. And,
they're kind of busted up.
It was almost
I'm seeing
instant.
50. Yeah, they're kind of busted up.
Yeah. And then we moved down the lake and we catch more. It was a fun day. I'm ready to go back. So,
yeah, it won't be long.
Yeah.
It sounds like we were talking. So your lake is known for the pleasure boaters on the weekends, right? Like every day is a zoo. But you said
miniature Ozarks.
You said September 2nd, it's a ghost town over there. No matter what the weather is.
As soon as we get through Labor Day. A week from today.
So I'm
week from today.
I may have to spend a little more time over there, it sounds like this fall. Especially if Cedar isn't where it needs to be. And I can go over there and just rip some lips and, like you said, bring the kids over and really enjoy a day.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, 100%. And it's 100%. It'd be put a Ned rig or something like that, or
drop shot,
something that they're going to eat, and a little jig worm, whatever. And it's perfect for a kid. It really is. It's perfect. You're not getting hung up where you're fishing, and the schools on this particular lake, they're usually over mud bottom somewhere. They're relating the bait. They're not relating the cover. So it's perfect for a kid when they're biting.
Yep. As long as the weather stays above, 75 degrees, I'll be over there because it starts getting pretty cool. I'm gonna have to go shoot me a deer somewhere. So
yeah, it's coming up. That's good. We like.
Are you a deer hunter, JB?
Like you.
I have. So.
Well, that's right. You're getting back into it.
Yeah, this is I pulled out my tag. So my son wants to start deer hunting, which I'm all about my kids. So,
absolutely.
And he asked if he could go this year, and I said yeah. And I said, well, if you're gonna, if we're gonna gun hunt, then at least I'm gonna get my time in. I'm gonna bow hunt a little bit, leading up to it. So I got everything back out the other day. Got my boat, took my boat to the shop, and got it retuned. And it's kind of like a boat. You haven't shot it in X amount of years. You kind of got to make sure it's going to run properly when you do go. So I've been shooting a lot more in the evenings after work, and I pulled out my tags from the last time that I had bought tags and deer hunted, and it was 2013. So 10 years since I've set foot in the deer woods. Now I waterfowl hunt a lot, but I hadn't deer hunted in.
It's been way longer than that for me. It's been probably 25 years.
So I'm looking forward to the.
That'll be fun with the boy.
Oh, absolutely. Eating backstrap, getting out with we got a really good group of guys that I used to hunt with. And they all still hunt together. They still got their cabin and their farm. It's expanded and they've bought more property. So just having access to a lot of different options, and he's got the open invite. My son has the open invite whenever he wants to come out and hunt. So, and we've been shooting. He's really taken a liking to shooting. We've started going to the range and shooting a little bit more, and he loves that. So
that's cool.
Just got to get him accustomed to a bigger boom than a 22. So therein lies the challenge right now.
Yeah, Doug says he knows a guy that makes sausage.
Yeah, he does make some pretty damn good sausage, because every time that I show up at Doug's house, I get sausage.
Every time I go fishing with him, he brings the fresh sausage. It's good stuff.
Well, see,
some of the best.
It's fun because his house, I go right by his house on my loop, and I apologize that I don't get to see him as much as I do, but when I have extra time, and it probably will be this month, I'm going to swing by and probably say hi to him. So.
Yeah, Lure Lab. He's talking about the back to school sale at Baitworks was good too. If you guys have not liked the Facebook page from Baitworks, do yourself a favor. They run just kind of flash sales at random times. They were offering like 70% off sales on select
almost
items.
Like every
week or so. Yeah,
there's had something new on there.
They had Strike King 1.5 and 2.5s for 25% off last week or the week before. Just random things that pop up. I try to share some of them on my social feeds, but a lot of times I miss them. So definitely go over there and like the page, man. Like those
Scotty
pages.
Edwards. Carolina rig a 3-hook Rapala on small bluff walls at Cedar.
That'll keep them busy for hours.
Yep. Go for it.
Somebody has caught a 6 or 7 pounder.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. That's
I've got a
the
funny story
floating
about
Rapala, not a
Carolina
countdown.
rigging
What's that, Ron?
I got a funny story about Carolina rigging a Rapala. So the guy I used to fish with, God rest his soul, Jay Zapp. So we were talking about night fishing at the beginning of the show. We were night fishing over at Little Grassy, and Carolina rig, something you throw from time to time, no big deal. And so we're just, I don't know, we're just in one of those moods. We're trying new stuff. So I Carolina rigged a Rapala, a floating Rapala.
3-hook?
Was it a 3-hook Rapala?
I don't remember. It was midnight, dude. It was a Rapala. That's all I remember.
Was there something like that involved with that too?
No. Jay didn't drink.
Okay.
Jay didn't drink when I was in his boat. So anyway, I catch a fish. I get a bite and I catch a fish. Well, it's about a 2 freaking pound crappie.
Dang.
So, yeah, that's what I said. Dang. And well, Jay at the time was a writer for Midwest Outdoors. So he takes my picture with this crappie, and then, like, just unbeknownst, like 2 months later, out of the blue, there's an article in Midwest Outdoors about Jay Zapp guiding for night crappie, or some total BS. And he's got my picture there with this crappie I caught in a Carolina rig about in the middle of the night on Little Grassy. I was like, okay, whatever.
You started a trend.
So don't believe everything you read.
Well,
It's a moral.
What the fearful thing about doing something like that is that it works, right? Like,
yeah,
they're not seeing it.
And then somebody sees you doing it, and it's like, what in the hell are y'all doing?
Well, if you think about it, if you had a floating Rapala,
it makes perfect sense, right?
And I've heard of people catching them like that. I'm always worried about getting hung up. You fish them by around any kind of wood. If it's just a rock lake, I could see it makes sense. But you get that thing around wood, and you're going to be, not even the auto Trieve can get, a bunch of those off.
There's a point,
yeah. But I guarantee it would work. You could stick that thing right in. I remember one time I was fishing Montauk outside the park. So this is trout fishing on the Current River. I went fishing with a buddy of mine named Doug, and he would take a Rapala and throw it downstream on a spinning rod, engage the reel, and hold his rod tip down right at the top of the surface of the water, just so that it was a gold blackback Rapala. I think it was a 3-hook as well. But it would literally be like a foot under the water. And he would just hold it there, and he would rip it up a foot and let it fall back, rip it up a foot. And he would walk out and get close to the undercuts on a bend, and he would stick his rod right up against the bank. The bait's 30 feet down river, and he would jerk that, and that Rapala would shoot up underneath those undercuts. And man, he would catch some big fish doing that. They just hadn't seen that, but that Rapala is it's a deadly little bait, and we don't fish it enough. It's kind of one of those. It's kind of like the Pose 300 crankbait. It's kind of forgotten about.
Yeah.
Scotty says no wood. Lure Lab says keep it off the bottom.
This is the thing.
Daryl says
this might be video material.
Used to work good on Kentucky Lake 30 years ago. So they haven't seen it in 29 then at least. And then Will's
going to go out and test it out tomorrow. I'm going fishing tomorrow too. I might have to I've already got 17 rods in the boat. What's 18?
Right?
I might as well rig up a
Rapala. Might as well be 18.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it is a pretty specific technique, so you're going to have to buy another Virtus rod.
You have to buy a technique specific Virtus rod for the Carolina rig stick bait.
Yep.
Nobody's doing it. They're not seeing
it's got to have enough tip on it, so when you do set the hook, you don't rip the treble hooks out.
Right. Right.
but it's got to have enough backbone that you can lob that 1 ounce
And
weight out there.
it needs to be like a 7.5 footer so you can really move that line.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you're in heavy current, you're gonna almost probably need something a little bit heavier because that bait's gonna travel a little bit more because it's gonna have a little drag on it.
You thinking 12-pound leader?
I was thinking
Fluorocarbon
14,
or mono? Probably mono.
14, but I think you can get away with fluorocarbon because it's gonna float.
Yeah, that's true. But I think mono would make it float higher.
True.
Tie a loop knot too.
Absolutely.
I actually tried that loop knot on a frog the other day. I think that's a knot that more people need to use, like an actual loop knot.
Really?
Yeah.
On a frog?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It gives it a little more freedom. I mean, I can walk a frog pretty good regardless, so it's not like I have to have it, but it did seem like it gave it a little more swing with that loop knot on there. So, yeah.
All right.
Let's wrap this up. We got
220, and we got 50 loyal.
There a little bit.
We did, but it wouldn't be
Late
Tuesday
night
Night Live
sarcasm.
without getting in the weeds a little bit.
This it's been fun, Ron. It's always good to have you on here.
Absolutely.
Obviously, people enjoy it because we still got 50 people on here. We've been rambling on from everything. So the fall bite, frog punching, underspin,
and we're really close too.
Yeah, and it's kind of happening right now.
I think things are starting to change already. Honestly.
Yep.
I really do. I think things are shifting slowly away from that midsummer thing. I really think it's already started.
That's good.
Yep.
I know the weather's started, and that's so refreshing. I about died last week. I've been working a lot of 11, 12-hour days because we're short. So last week I worked several 11, 12-hour days with whatever that heat index was sitting in that little toaster oven. I mean, I had a guy at work. He had 123 degrees in his melt truck, and that doesn't include whatever the heat index was.
Right.
You're talking 135, 140 with the heat index.
That was like 90% humidity too.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So when I saw that forecast for 80-degree days, that was a godsend. I'm so happy.
Well, see, what I would have done was I would have called my buddy Ron and said, "Hey, I got the gas. Let's go." And we would have went north.
Let's go. Hey, everybody! I encourage everyone to try that balsa crankbait in the grass.
Absolutely.
That's a real deal. That's make short casts, just like you're throwing a spinnerbait, and just work that, let it float up, work it down, let it float up. You'll be able to snap it through the grass to it. I mean, it won't take long to figure that out. That will catch fish. And then if your lake doesn't have grass, try that balsa crankbait on blowdowns. And they're hitting a bait that's floating up as opposed to everything else they've hit for the last 6 months is sinking. I think that's part of it. And it's usually when the bait is floating up, you'll see them roll on it. So
that's exactly why the Carolina rigged Rapala works too.
Yep.
Because you let it, if you feed it line, it just kind of floats up and you pull it back in.
All right, let's shut this down.
All right, folks. Same time, same place next Tuesday. Thanks to everybody for hanging out. And till next time. Thanks, Ron. Enjoyed hanging out with you.
See you guys.